Motegi. Both countries have called for the speedy resolution of the conflict during a bilateral meeting in Pretoria. Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court judgment on the EFF's bid to revive the Phala Phala saga will be delivered on Friday. I'm Ndulambana for SFM News Headlines at 3:30.
And a reminder to you, Momentum is part of the Momentum Group Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Some say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, sometimes it gets the grease, sometimes it gets replaced. Generic guidance only fits a few situations. That's why Momentum accredited financial advisors take the time to understand you and only then apply their expertise. Advice meets your context. Momentum, your journey to success. Momentum is part of Momentum Group Limited, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
In sports this hour, Sports Ministry names 16 fans for all expenses paid FIFA World Cup. Mashimbi hails loose maturity at the top, and Knicks crash sixes and extend historic run. More details at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, fingers on the pulse. How do you have your fingers on the pulse of the nation? Well, tune in to the National Pulse, and that's exactly what you're doing right now. So thank you, and welcome to the show. And as you listen in, get someone else who doesn't quite listen in to say, hey, bring them on board. How best way for them to get connected, isn't it? So thank you for joining us. Now to call in live, make a note of this number, 086 000 2032. Then you can WhatsApp, text or voice note 0614 104 107. Follow SFM Radio on the X platform, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And you can follow me as well, Ashraf Garda. And do tag us when you are tweeting or sharing your thoughts on social media using that hashtag, the National Pulse. We'll certainly pick it up as well. Lots to consider. As always, we are in the midst of Africa Month. We'll talk about developing the continent of Africa later on. And then back home, there's a really intriguing conversation about the 500 million rand Spaza Shop Support Fund we're going to be talking about later on. But first things first, you may have heard it on the news as well. Fadil Adams to present himself after being arrested today. We'll talk about that. Well, first up, here on the National Pulse.
When you listen to me, I feel important. When you hug me, I feel safe. When you talk with me, I learn.
Your love and attention helps your child grow strong and confident. Listen, comfort, and connect with him, because every child deserves to feel seen, heard, and loved.
Visit holdmyhand.org.za.
When Avukile was diagnosed with blood cancer, his only hope was a stem cell transplant from a matching donor. Thankfully, a perfect match was found, and Avukile received the transplant that saved his life. But thousands of patients in South Africa are still waiting to find their match. Together, we can give more patients like Avukile a second chance at life. Visit dkmsafrica.org.
This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, so certainly a day of high drama now with the South African Police Service saying its political killings task team is calling on the National Coloured Congress leader Fadil Adams to present himself at the nearest police station in connection with charges of fraud and defeating or obstructing the course of justice. So what actually happened today? Brigadier Atlenda Mate, the SAPS national spokesperson, with us here on the National Pulse. Thanks for joining us as always.
A very good afternoon to you and to your listeners.
All right, give us some context here. Well, first of all, has Fadil Adams presented himself?
He didn't present himself. He was all over TV this morning, and our police then proceeded to where he was conducting the interviews at the parliamentary village, and we then placed him under arrest. We had been looking for him for quite some time over the weekend, We obtained a J50 warrant of arrest last week, and on his alleged interference and obstructing the course of justice on the Sindiso Magaqa murder case. So he had not been cooperating because we visited multiple addresses. We engaged with his lawyer. They had agreed that he would hand himself over on Monday already, and he had not done so. So today he was placed on arrest. He's already en route to KwaZulu-Natal, where he's expected to appear in court on those charges.
All right, so let's just get the context again. Specifically, the warrant for arrest, the actual charge is what?
Okay, so the background to the charges, you'll recall that Mr. Sindiso Magaqa was murdered in 2017. And by 2018, there was no movement on the case at all. But then in 2018, we saw the establishment of the political killings task team. And their first case they had on their hands was the Sindiso Magaqa murder. And it was then when they started making linkages, identified key suspects. And we then found that actually there was a suspect who was already in custody on a separate matter. It was a cash in transit heist. We linked that firearm that we had already in our possession that we found on the suspect on the CIT matter. We then, through ballistic, linked it to the actual murder weapon that was used to kill Mr. Sindiso Magaqa. So the case started there, where we noted that the suspect and the hitman was already in custody on a separate case. We then started investigating from there. We identified the key suspects and so on. So it is a case that we've been working on for years. You'll recall that the hitman was convicted in July 2025 to 85 years imprisonment. But we had already also identified 4 other key suspects, which would have included the former mayor of Umzimkhulu, who ended up committing suicide, the former municipal manager, who is still in police custody. He was denied bail. We then identified 2 former police officers as well that were arrested. They were in custody. They took their matter to the High Court, and they are now out on bail. The other suspect or accused person is in a mental institution. So the case really it's still ongoing, the investigations, because we do believe that there could be more other people that are linked to the case. So through investigation, we then discovered that Mr. Faisal Adams has been going to the prison where this hitman is kept even before his conviction, where he went there with another police officer who is not even linked to the case. He started taking statements and interviewing this hitman while he knows that police are at a very sensitive and advanced stage of the investigation. He knows that the political killings task team is investigating this matter. There is a dedicated team, and all resources have been deployed to really get to the bottom of the truth. So it is our then question that what was the purpose, what was the motive, and what was the interest, particularly on this particular case? Because it is the SAPS, the political killings task team, that uncovered that Sindiso Magaqa's hitman was still in custody. They identified the suspects, and they even identified that police officers were involved. Hence, they arrested those particular police officers for this particular matter. So we saw his actions as interfering in the administration of justice. We investigated the case. We took the docket to the DPP, who agreed that Mr. Adams must be given an opportunity in court to explain why he was basically interfering with an ongoing police investigation.
So to confirm then, I mean, in terms of that journey, the actual charge is what? He's interfering with police processes, yeah?
Yes, so basically the charge is fraud, because who mandated you to take down a statement of an accused person who was not yet convicted? Remember, that person has an instructing lawyer. You did not follow due process. You know there is an investigating team that is working on the case. You take the statement. The next thing, the statement is all over social media. You're compromising the case. So that is fraud. And then obstructing and interfering at the course of justice as well is added onto those particular charges to say, now is the time for Mr. Adams to explain to the nation why the interest in this case, why the need to go and arrest an accused person who was awaiting conviction. What was the motive and why the interest, basically?
All right. Just has there been a statement from Fadil Adams so far in terms of defending his position, in terms of why he's done what he's done?
Mr. Adams is making all sorts of accusations, saying that he's being intimidated, he is being targeted, and so on. But he's not really explaining why he went there when there is an ongoing investigation. He's saying, no, police never took statements, never. There is a way in which police work. There is a strategy in which police, the detectives are working to get information from a suspect or a key suspect in this matter, a hitman. So he really needs to come forward and explain, because that is seen as interfering in the course of justice.
How often does this sort of thing happen, particularly with in fact a political figure who takes on that role as, being the police, doing the job of the police?
No one has really a right to go and especially during a very sensitive stage of the case such as this one, where we are still investigating. You will recall that there were allegations that crime intelligence was involved. So it's a broader investigation. And police, we feel that we are on the right track in terms of investigation. So in such a sensitive case, you can't just allow anyone to meddle in the affairs of such an investigation, where you still need to uncover certain elements of that particular investigation. So it's his opportunity to explain what was the interest, what was the purpose. So, for example, if he says he was taking down the statement, he needed more information, you know there is an investigating team, a dedicated one that is working on the case. After taking that statement, why do you splash it on social media and not give it to the team that is already investigating to say, no, I was assisting? He didn't do that. Not once did he engage with the team, the detectives, and say, this is what I have found and uncovered.
And where does this, just so from an understanding point of view, where does this differ from, what often has been described as a citizen's arrest?
So remember, citizen's arrest is when perhaps the police are not yet there at the scene. The citizens have a right and a responsibility when they have witnessed a crime to place the person under a citizen's arrest, not for questioning them or not for harassing them or assaulting them, but for the mere purpose of handing them over to police, so that police that are trained can do the job. They can process the person, they can arrest the person and make sure the person appears in court.
What happens next?
So what happens next is that, like I indicated, he's on his way to KwaZulu-Natal, where basically he was arrested at the Parliamentary Village. He was taken to a local police station where he was processed, and then he had to be booked out. He was booked out, and now he's on his way to KZN, where he will then appear before court, where he must now answer to those particular charges.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Rather dramatic day indeed, and certainly his arrest and accusations as well against significant members of the police service itself. Brigadier Madlanga Matia, thanks for your time here on the National Pulse.
Outsurance can't improve your karaoke skills, but they could improve the car insurance premium you currently pay. SMS out to 30754. Get a quote today, and if Outsurance can't save you money on your car insurance premium, ask for 500 Rand cash. Make that 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get a quote and get savings or cash. Either way, you win. SMS out to 30754. Want all the bells and whistles of car insurance at a great price? It's time to switch to Outsurance. Not only could they save you some big bucks, you also get the legendary out bonus that pays you a percentage of your premiums back if you're claim-free. So, are you ready to switch and save? Don't miss out. SMS right now to make sure you always get something out. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Outsurance. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, so I'll tell you what, we're going to talk about other things just now, including developments regarding the Township Economic Commission that comes up next. But let's get reaction from you, and there has certainly been reaction. Here we are.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashara. You know, Ashara, when you grow up, we used to say police are useless and so forth. But I always say, wait until the van of the police parked outside of your home or your house. Then you'll realize that police are not useless. The same way as Fadel Adams did when he was saying Kwanas is useless and so forth and so what. And then now what is happening? They are calamage. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, that's one reaction. Here's another, right? And a very different take.
Hey, Ashraf. Jacques here, Cape Town. I'm now not an NCC member, but you can now see this thing. How can you arrest someone and he's on the route to KZN? No, man, you can see this guy, he spoke against the police and how they want to deal with him to make all the other people, all the other whistleblowers quiet. They want to get him back for that officers that was arrested.
But I mean, what about the literal context? That did he attempt to effectively do the work of a police officer, taking statements without informing them, acting as if he's a police officer? And if that's okay, well, is that okay? Here's another comment to myself, Ashraf, or Mr. Garda and the team. Just call me Ashraf, it's fine. Mazwi from PE or Klebeka. We're in trouble. You touch Mkonazi, you go to jail. The warrant for Mr. Adams is not clear. Organs of state are using to settle scores here. Well, there's lots more. So bring them, keep them coming. What do you make of in this case here, the arrest of Fadil Adams? What do you make of it? What do you make of the accusations from the police point of view that in fact that's why he's been arrested in connection with charges of fraud and defeating or obstructing the course of justice? What, in terms of what you know he's done or alleged to have done, what do you make of that? Give me your thoughts. WhatsApp, text messages, ASAP, 0614 104 107, to call in live, 086 000 2032. Let's talk about another big issue, the Spaza Shop Support Fund. It's worth 500 million rands, or is it?
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
So the government has been urged to be transparent about the 500 million rand Spaza Shop Support Fund. So there's been a concern around that. The concerns are the potential mismanagement of the project. You may remember it was launched last year, right? And a huge fanfare is a major cause to empower South African-owned township and rural Spaza shops. So what's happened since then? And why the urging of the government to be transparent? Transparent about what? Becky Kwana is the President of the Township Economic Commission of South Africa. Becky, I appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
We're very excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Right. What do you make of, well, is there a need for the government to be transparent? More transparent?
Yeah, you remember when we go back to the 28th of February 2025, where it was a deadline for the registration of the Spaza Shop, but we also launched officially the 500 million Spaza Shop Fund from both the DTIC and the Department of Small Business Development. It was launched here in Soweto, but up until today, we don't have a clear indication and the communication from government, how many people they've applied, or how many people they've managed to register their Spaza shops, how many they've applied for the 500 million rand. People are coming to us to find out what is happening because nobody is saying they've received the fund. Now, this is why we're calling on government to really communicate with the people on the ground Where are we? How many people have received the funds? And what are the bottlenecks and what are the challenges?
All right. So as someone who's very, very central to township economic development itself, one thing is asking government, but from the information you have, what do you know? That means what has happened to the 500 million rands?
Yeah, no, the information that we have is that most of the people that are applying is mainly from the KwaZulu-Natal, KZN, the Gauteng, and the Western Cape. The other provinces are lacking, but the biggest challenge is that most of the people that are applying, they don't qualify because they are not formally registered. Because remember, when you register a sponsorship, you must register with your municipality. But the process to register and the requirements of registering a sponsorship is too tedious. Our people are not able to get those sponsorships being registered as well.
But is that not a valid point? That the problem is you can't have hundreds of people in a queue saying I want some funding. I've got my little side business, and what does sponsorship mean? Does it have to be a physical construct? Can it be that you're selling apples outside? And the point is, if they're not registered, then surely they would disqualify themselves. Or do you think that interpretation is wrong?
Yeah, this is why even yesterday with the city of Johannesburg, we had the sponsorship and informal traders workshops where we're going to the people and workshopping the people in terms of what needs to be done. But at the same time, as the president said during the National Economic Development Summit at Beirut about 3 weeks ago, to say the ease of doing business in the township is very risky. It's not easy. That is why we need to then make sure that we remove those red tapes and those barriers to entry. One of them, for example, when you register a sponsorship, one of the requirements there is the title deed, the business plans, and all that. Most of the people, when you look at the history of our townships and our families, it's not even easy to get even that title deed. That is why we're talking and lobbying with the government to ease some of these regulations or these processes so that we get our people to be able to register for sponsorships and access these funds.
Right. What have they said so far in terms of the call from a government perspective of being more transparent? What have they said so far?
Yeah, no. We are. It's looking warm because we are pushing to have the sponsorship in Bizo, the national in Bizo, so that we're getting all the stakeholders on board. We're able to then arrest the situation, because at the end of the day, people are keep on pushing the can down the road. We need to make sure that at the end of the day, we need to have what is important actually more than anything is the impact on the ground. How many shops that are now running properly, well funded, they've got the stock and all that? We don't see that happening. This is why we are saying let's come to a bigger forum where we get all the stakeholders on board and come up with the real solution and the lasting solution that will help our businesses. And also the 500 million sponsorship, we're saying we need also to get the private sector so that we have the blended finance, because the 500 million sponsorship is not enough when you look at the size of the people that are running sponsorship and you look at the size of the country.
So what then is the mood of the people, those that have received funding and those that have not received funding? What are they saying?
Yeah, that is why at the end of the day, the majority of the people are frustrated because they are not getting any support. That is why we are saying we also need to create our own way of funding our own businesses, rather than just relying on government and private sector. But also as businesses, we need also to come together and create creative concepts that we can also use to fund our own businesses. But at the end of the day, people are demoralized. People are not excited anymore. They used to be excited. People are not excited. But also with the situation that we're facing of unemployment, it's very important for us to push and get as many job creators as possible, attract young people to the businesses. Remember, we are in the 50th anniversary of the Soweto Uprising. We are saying, where are we in terms of the freedom of the township economy? Where are we? And then, because these are challenges that are facing, and we saw sponsorship as one of the elements that can help, and in terms of creating jobs as well.
Just let's conclude by asking you this. I mean, in terms of the township economy that we talk about, right? Tell me more about the size of the township economy and the biggest challenges that economy faces.
Yes, thank you so much. When you talk about township economy, number one, it's got four siblings. It's got your rural economy, your trained doctors economy, your informal settlement economy. It's an economy that worth more than R1 trillion per annum. Spaza Shop alone is 150 to 180 billion rand per annum. And then the stock house is about 50 billion per annum. Tax industry is about 49 to 50 billion. Now, it's an economy that you can't ignore. And you've got other economies. The township economy is not just only Spaza shops or the retail. We've got 24 economies, the automotive economy, the tourism economy. This is why we're saying we not need to then only focus when we talk township economy, only focus on the Spaza shop and the retail. But what about other sectors that are big in the township economy? It's an economy that you can't Ashraf.
Okay, an economy that you can't ignore. Thank you for your time, Becky Kwala, the president of the Township Economic Commission of South Africa. And the context, government urged to be more transparent. 500 million rands allocated for the Spaza Shop Support Fund. Many people complaining that not enough has been distributed. Many saying there's so much red tape. They can't get the funding. Well, are you one of those people? Are you one of these township businesses that are struggling to get any support, although the claim is that you will get support? If so, what has happened to you? Do you know others who've received support, and what's happened to you? How much money have you received? How difficult, how easy has it been? So if you can, share with us your own anecdotes. I'd love to know your story as a township business attempting to receive support from this 500 million rand Spaza Shop Support Fund. Welcome to the National Pulse, 3:30. Here's the news headlines with Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, the Constitutional Court judgment on the EFF's bid to revive the Phala saga will be delivered on Friday. Agriculture Minister Johnston Hazen says the country has procured every available dose of foot and mouth disease that is compatible to the South African situation. And the Johannesburg Emergency Services says it remains on high alert and will be monitoring all 7 regions across the city as cold weather conditions are expected from today until tomorrow. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Shimi, all I know is I'm not one of those 16 fans, but who are?
A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie has announced the names of 16 lucky fans who will travel to support Bafana Bafana at the FIFA World Cup in June. This initiative is aimed at boosting national pride and also just making sure that a lot of South African supporters are represented on the world stage. Remember, originally 20 fans were said to be chosen, so the remaining 4 spots will now be filled through a wildcard selection process, which is expected to be launched on social media tomorrow. And Mackenzie says that the group will attend the opening match only before returning to South Africa. He's also reiterated that he has nothing against superfan Mama Joy.
But how do I justify taking Mama Joy for the umpteenth time? I can't. The last trip, the department spent 800,000. Business class flights, 5-star hotels. The people here are not going on business class flights. We can send more people with that 800,000 than just send one person. Do we want this thing of South Africans where some people think some things are meant for them? That's not right. That's not right. They think things are meant for them, and other people must apply, make videos like they are less important. These ones get automatic qualification. No, it can't work like that. It cannot work like that. So we've got nothing against Mama Joy. But Mama Joy was posting out there, she got a sponsor, was the happiest person. I thought that problem is now done. She's got a sponsor. If Mama Joy doesn't have a ticket and she's there, I will not leave Mama Joy outside because she loves Bafana Bafana. I will say no, even if I have to take off my own funds to pay her, not a flight ticket, if she's at a stadium and she's there, my heart wouldn't allow me to leave her outside the stadium because I know she loves Bafana Bafana. But all these people, they have an equal right. The 16 people or the 20 people that are going, they have an equal right to be there like Mama Joy.
Well, still staying with football, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso has won the Betway Premiership Coach of the Month award for the third time in a row. He led the team through an unbeaten run in April with 3 wins and 2 draws, helping Sundowns return to the top of the table ahead of Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs. Pirates forward Oswin Apollos was named Player of the Month after scoring 4 goals and setting up another in 4 matches. He also won Goal of the Month for his calm finish against Amazulu at Orlando Stadium, a goal many are already calling one of the best this season. Elsewhere, Phil Foden has reached an agreement in principle on a new 4-year contract at Manchester City, keeping him at Etihad until 2030 with an option for another year. The 25-year-old midfielder, who has struggled for form in recent months, came off the bench in City's 3-3 draw at Everton yesterday, and despite not scoring since December, City's commitment underlines his importance, with Foden having already made 365 appearances and also won 6 Premier League titles, a Champions League and 2 FA Cups. In cricket, Proteas woman coach Madlanga Mashimbi has applauded Sune Lee's maturity in her new role for the team, saying that she has shown her class as a player. Mashimbi promoted Lees to an opening batter alongside captain Laura Vard during the past season and believes the two have complemented each other very well.
Yeah, I think taking Sune up the order it is something that I pondered for a while because I needed somebody that's going to play maybe an anchoring role with a player that can possibly take on the bowlers or put bowlers under pressure up front. And I think them two complement each other very well at the moment. She's very good against spin. But the last 10, 11 games that she's played for us, batting the top of the order, she's really showed her class, and she can only grow from here. She can only become better.
Anything's off with basketball. New York Knicks beat the Philadelphia 76ers 137-90 in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Knicks became the first team in NBA history to win 3 straight postseason games by at least 25 points, shooting 63% and leading by as many as 40. Now, New York has now won 4 straight by a combined 135 points, continuing a dominant run that began against Atlanta. Game 2 is tomorrow before the series shifts to Philadelphia. Well, Ashraf, it seems like you might still have a chance because there's still 4 spots left. Who knows? You might go to the World Cup.
Well, there you are. And I tell you what, if I can get my own flight, I'll be outside. Maybe the Minister of Sport will say, I can't let you stand outside. So there's always a way, isn't it? There we are. Thanks for that, Tumi.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Do you have a car you like to sell, but don't trust your uncle or your pal? Then we buy cars, it's just for you. Buying cars is what we do. We offer service with a smile. We always go the extra mile. Use a place that you trust and sell your car to us.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
And talking about flying, well, South Africa, get ready. Fly Sefe's 12th birthday dash takes off tomorrow at 9 a.m. with 50,000 sale tickets up for grabs for domestic travel until the 30th of November. That's the end of this year, right? However, as we've all been trumped by high fuel costs, Fly Sefe's sale will work a bit differently this time around. Base fares will be as low as 12 rands. But fuel surcharges and taxes apply on top of that. It's still the best flight bargain around. So clear your calendars, dash to Fly Sefes or flysefe.co.za tomorrow. T's and C's apply.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, let's get some more comments from you. And there's lots of reaction, which is really welcome because we want that. We have an issue, we'll table the issue, and we want reaction. What are you thinking about the arrest of Fadil Adams?
Hi, Ashraf. I think in this country, if you go against Hlahla Mkhwanazi, you end up in handcuffs or dead. There's nothing that Fidel Adams did that was wrong. Journalists do what he did all the time. Why aren't all the journalists arrested? Thanks.
Why aren't all the journalists? Do journalists take actual statements? Do they like effectively arrest people? Do they do that? Can they do that?
Good afternoon, SAFM. Well, I think we need to really start looking at all sides of the table here and stop having this infatuation with Mkhwanazi. And I'm not protecting Adams in any way because I think he doesn't deal with things very well. But South Africans are always complaining about the police's investigations take so long. We don't know what's going on and our safety. And these criminals are walking the street, and it's investigative teams like Mkhwanazi's and PKTT that are taking so long to get back to South Africans. And here Fadil laid it out straight. He laid it bare and he said, this is what's going on. So they want to arrest him for doing his civic duty. So at the end of the day, South Africans need to understand Cape Townians are sick and tired of gangsterism. And Fadil is fighting that, even though I'm not a fan.
But then you are a fan. If you're saying he's fighting that means you're admiring what he's doing. You know, there's a difference between the word fan and fan. What is it you're saying?
Afternoon, Ashraf, active citizen in Polokwane. Rest assured, everyone who spoke bad or who's speaking bad or who does not agree with Lieutenant General Hlahla Mkhwanazi, his or her hands are dirty or has got blood, including Julius Malema. So I'm not surprised when this Abrams is arrested. I felt or this man is hiding something and he wants to discredit Mkhwanazi so that when his time comes, he could have a ground to accuse Mkhwanazi and the police. So he must go and rot in jail like Julius Malema as well. Julius Malema must go follow the footstep of this Abrams as well.
Why would you think he's going to rot in jail? Okay.
Gore. No, Adams has been a questionable character. You know what he was doing, what he was saying. He would be all over the show saying this and that. And to me, I'm not an investigator. I'm a mathematician. I was trying to connect the dot. But now, his dot was not really valid. I never doubted Mkhwanazi even from the beginning. When he started attacking Mkhwanazi, I realized that no, this one must be having a serious problem. He must be hiding something. He was sitting on top of a pressure cooker. Now it's about to explode. You know, he was like a questionable character. He was like hiding something. And I know that things are coming. I never trusted Adams even from the beginning. I felt something is brewing.
Okay, and there's lots of comment about Fadil Adams' character, but the reality is it can't just be about character. You have to take the issue on its actual case, not what you think the person is and what the person may have done elsewhere, and bring that into the conversation, right? Okay, talking about the conversation, this is Africa Month, and you'll see from now a very clear, it culminates on Africa Day, the 25th of May. So you will listen to the shows, not just this show, but other shows on SAFM, with a very clear, intentional focus on all things Africa, as it ought to be, isn't it? One of them is to talk about developing Africa. We'll do that next.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
So interesting thought as we talk about Africa Month. Just, where is Africa as a continent economically? And when we make the comparisons to, say, Africa versus the European Union, where are we economically? What are we getting right? What are we getting wrong? What about the views of our citizens and how we operate with passports and visas and borders and the free movement or the not so free movement, right? I mean, those are important comparisons. All of that either enhances or sometimes diminishes the continent's ability to be globally competitive. So then, where are we right now with the African continent? Let's find out with Arnold Akpe, who's the chairman of the Business Council for Africa. Arnold, thank you for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, it's an important time to talk to you because, I think the big issue outside of just slogans, Africa for Africans and we are African, is you want to see a sizable impact this continent can make for its own people and then for the world, right? Well, what's your general assessment as a starting point in terms of where is Africa right now compared to the rest of the world?
I think Africa is not where it should be. Africa has not made as much progress as the rest of the world. But having said that, there's a lot of progress made. And what we have to do is actually figure out how best we respond to all the changes, both positive and negative, that are going on in the rest of the world.
Okay, and the question then is, how do we change that? Because if it's not where it should be, what are the steps that needs to be taken for Africa to be where it should be?
I think that just a few steps. The first thing is to understand that the current model of economic development Africa has been pursuing is probably one that needs to be reconsidered. If you look at China grew double digits for over 30 years to begin to catch up with the rest of the world. Most African countries are not growing up to 5% a year. We need to be more ambitious in terms of our development strategy, and we need to take the appropriate steps to implement that strategy.
Okay, let's then talk about, when we say develop a strategy, you have clear views on the people of Africa developing our continent, right? Instead of, what we see in huge numbers migrating. Yesterday, ironically, we had a conversation about why are Zimbabweans in South Africa? What is it that causes them to leave their country? That broader question can apply to us as Africans leaving the African continent. How do we change that? It can be more than just saying stick around. Something has to give, right?
No, I think it's very clear we need to do something. Nationals don't leave their countries and go elsewhere if they're happy or they see opportunities in their home countries. The challenge is that Africa is not providing those opportunities, but in my opinion, Africa can and Africa should. For example, Mr. Dangote has recently opened a refinery in Nigeria. He's looking at doing that in other parts of Africa. What that does is create opportunities and hope and employment for Africans. We need to have that happening in far more African countries. Then perhaps Africans will not be heading out to Europe or the US because they feel that they don't have hope in their home countries. Yeah.
There's a sense that there's the political Africa and there's economic Africa. And as we see in so many parts of the world, it is the economic clout that countries have that then determines the political influence that they have, right? So your thoughts on how Africa can become more economically competitive?
Look, the future of Africa depends on Africans. Foreign direct investment is useful, but does not develop any country. The natives, the locals, the nationals have to develop the countries. If you look at Africa currently, freedom of movement. It's easier to travel in Africa with a foreign European or a British passport than it is with an African passport. That shouldn't be happening. We can fix that as Africans. If you look at the free movement of money and stuff it's very difficult. Africa makes it difficult for Africans to work in developing Africa. The first thing we need to do is to say, let's take our destiny to our own hands. Foreign direct investment can help, but never really develop a country on its own. It's a supporting role, and we should then focus on getting things done. And I think if we do that, we'll begin to see sustainable development in Africa. The Business Council for Africa recently published a red index of development in Africa, and we found that only 4 countries, Morocco, Egypt, South Africa, and Mauritius, were on a sustainable path to industrialization. All others were either vulnerable or stalled in terms of industrialization. We need to fix that. We need to have more African countries moving on the right path to industrial development.
So when you say, we need to fix that, are we talking we, the governments of the African continent? Are we talking about we, the big business leaders? Are we talking about we at micro economic levels, those that are in South African terms, we talk about township businesses. Who's the we?
The we is all of the above. I think African governments are very good at attending Africa-US Summit, Africa-China Summit, Africa-European Summit. We need to have an Africa-Africa Summit where we sit together and fix the African problems which are within our control. The second thing is the private sector has to play a role. If you look at Mr. Dangote again, he's investing all over Africa. He's not looking at credit ratings. He's not looking at risk premiums. He is an African, so he has a fundamental faith and trust in the future of our continent. That's a sort of positive approach that we need to have both from the government and the private sector.
But do you get a sense that, as you said, government and private sector, that is there a high degree of cohesion? And we're talking of more than one country. You mentioned Dangote, but clearly there's beyond Nigeria, right? Is there a high degree of cohesion, or in fact, is there a disconnect between government and business leaders?
I find that when there's a high degree of cohesion, the countries tend to develop and industrialize some more. Morocco is a good example. It's probably the best example. The government and the private sector work together to develop the country, and Morocco is right at the forefront of economic and industrial development in Africa. In the other countries, perhaps less so, but these are things that can be fixed. I think what we need to see are positive leaders who see the future of their country and our continent as something that we can take into our own hands. It would be encouraging the private sector to invest. It would be the government having ambitious developmental goals and creating an enabling environment for this to happen.
And just to end with, in the 30 seconds that we have remaining, there's lots of talk about the role of artificial intelligence and other issues, right? Does Africa have a unique selling proposition that will enable us to be globally competitive, that gives us an edge, even if we're not using it right now?
Africa is the future of the world. And I mean that seriously, because we have the resources, we have the people, and we have the potential. What we need to do is bring that together in a very powerful way, and AI will be part of that process. We will be looking to harness current technology, our people, our resources, and our enterprise to try and move Africa a bit more to the forefront of global development.
And
we're too far behind. We need to catch up.
And we want that to happen very, very quickly. Arnold Akpe, appreciate your time. We're too far behind. We need to catch up. That's a clear message. Question is, what are you doing about it? Wherever you are on the African continent. Arnold Akpe, chairperson of the Business Council for Africa.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, further comments. By the way, you may want to add your thoughts on that as well. Africa, the continent of Africa, in Africa Month again, is it only about celebration? Lots of nostalgia, lots about, the glory days of the past, or do we use days like the Africa Day as I've said the other day, even with Freedom Day in South Africa, as an actual galvanizing force for the future? So what is it we should be doing in Africa on Africa Day, in Africa Month, as we are right now, to ensure that we own the African narrative, we as a people, amongst the many nations that make up the African continent? Let's look at solutions. So how about you adding your thoughts? You can call in live when we open the lines, but WhatsApp comments you can do right away. We'll bank it and play it as soon as we can. In the meantime, there are other developments that you'd be wondering where this goes to. It's been day one of the NHI legal challenge. So let me give you perspective. The Constitutional Court is hearing arguments against the implementation of the National Health Insurance Scheme brought by the Western Cape Provincial Government and the Board of Healthcare Funders. They are challenging the drafting of the act. So who are they? What are their motives around challenging this act? Just how significant could it be? With me is Nosipho Khadebe, the SABC reporter who's been on the beat. Nosipho, appreciate you joining us on the National Pulse.
Hi, Ashraf, and it's a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
Thank you. So this could be a significant day with regard to the NHI challenge. Give us some context here.
Indeed, it is a significant day, and it was a tense day in court. Of course, the Constitutional Court is going to hear from the applicants over the next 3 days. But the first to take to make submissions was the Board of Healthcare Funders, and they've essentially argued that the public was never told, what the NHI would cost, what services it would cover, or how it would work. And their argument centers on the question of meaningful public participation. So, did members of the public actually understand the purpose of the Act, and did the process also then result in enhancing the lawmaking process and provide for better legislation? And they argue that this didn't happen and that this process, of course, needs to be set aside. They say that the process was flawed. And of course, they want more. They say that government or the department had actually just undertaken then a tick box exercise when it comes to public participation and didn't actually, get into the substance of the NHI to help the public understand exactly what this NHI would be doing, what it would be covering, and how essentially it would work. And so they wanted to know, or they argue and claim that the government just wanted people to say whether they were for the NHI or against the NHI, and this is based off information that the public didn't have fully to engage in terms of this matter. We've also heard from Parliament themselves, because Parliament are also then part of the respondents to the application, Parliament, the department, as well as the presidency. And Parliament has defended itself, saying, that it did, of course, take extensive public participation did take place in relation to the National Health Insurance Act, and that actually the question around the funding, that's been overblown, and that, the funding around the NHI as the advocate manager for the Parliament said, when it came to the issue of grants, government had managed to make the funds available, and so a similar process will essentially follow then when it comes to the NHI. But both parties, Ashraf, have been pressed by the Constitutional Court justices, pressed in terms of their arguments. We know that when it came to the argument by the BHF, they were they were challenged then by the justices on the point that Parliament can actually proceed then without altering the Act once public participation had been concluded, which was one of the arguments that was made by the BHF, that, even though there was this public participation, they don't see how the sort of engagements or the issues that were raised by the public were actually put into changes into the Act. And so the justices pressed the advocate Leach then for the BHF on this, and they also pressed Parliament on then this issue of funding, as to how then do we get how does the public understand the funding of this? How are we supposed to understand where the money will go, given the rampant corruption that they read about, or we see in the media regarding the health department and issues around health services in South Africa. So essentially, in a nutshell, that's what came out of today's proceedings. And of course, we've got 2 more days of proceedings, and we are expecting to hear from the Western Cape government, who in another, in the same matter, but in a different argument, then arguing that their submissions at the NCOP were not taken into consideration.
Okay. And this is just more of an opinion as opposed to a fact. Do you get a sense that in this case your battle lines are drawn against, vested interests from those that see interest for them for NHI to be implemented versus those that see a threat to whatever businesses they are involved in right now if NHI is implemented?
Certainly the battle lines are drawn. And, with the BHF, they made sure to make the argument in the beginning of their submissions that this is not an argument against the implementation of universal health care. They say they support universal health care, but the issue is, of course, that, they're challenging the process in which this all happened, or in all of this unfolded. because they say that, they're happy for universal healthcare. That's something that we do need as a country. But we also heard from the justices, of course, questioning the parties around, inequality in South Africa is a major challenge. And so, having something like the NHI, where it seeks then to have universal healthcare coverage, managing the healthcare costs for various parts of society, ensuring that there's equality in that sort of realm, that they're, the parties had to just point out exactly, where this would come in. And, for the department, of course, they say that, they want the implementation, of course, to go ahead so that South Africans have better access to healthcare coverage. And that's, of course, where the medical aids then will come in, because then some of the, services that are offered by medical aid, because we heard in court that if you want to go to a private healthcare facility, medical aid, you will need medical aid. And so, the cost to cover that service. But with the NHI, that's where the NHI then would come in to cover some certain services that are offered, and then medical aids would then sort of their role would be pulled back, because there'd be less than that they're sort of offering to the public.
Okay, well, thank you for that roundup, and I'm sure we'll chat to you again sometime tomorrow. Nozipho Khadebe, SABC reporter, covering that story, day one of what is now called the NHI Legal Challenge. Just how convincing is one side versus the other? Hold on to that thought, but give me your comments too. It's 4 o'clock. Here's the news with Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, Concord judgment on Phala Phala expected on Friday. In Joburg, EMS on high alert as temperatures drop. For SAFM News, I'm Ondelambana, and a very good afternoon. The Constitutional Court judgment on the EFF's bid to revive the Phala Phala saga will be delivered on Friday. This is revealed in correspondence from the Apex Court to the EFF, which has been calling for the delivery of the judgment on the matter, which was initially heard in November 2024. The party turned to the Concord in 2024 to challenge Parliament's December 2022 decision to not adopt the Section 89 panel report. It found that President Cyril Ramaphosa may have a case to answer on the issue. This is in relation to a 2020 incident where foreign currency was stolen during a burglary at Ramaphosa's Limpopo farm. Hawks head of serious organised crime investigations, Hendrik Flynn, has testified at the Madlanga Commission that only a designated SAP 13 clerk or official custodian is permitted to open and lock the evidence vault. He says this is a measure intended to ensure accountability. Flynn was speaking in relation to the 2021 theft of cocaine from the Hawks premises in Port Shepstone, KwaZulu-Natal. Evidence before the Commission has also revealed that KZN Hawks head Lesicha Sinona took possession of the strong room keys after the exhibits had been stored. Flynn emphasized that limiting access to authorized personnel is critical in maintaining the integrity and security of exhibits.
Commissioners, the SAP 13 clerk or the custodian is the only person who is allowed to open that vault and to lock it again, because that maintains obviously chain of custody and ensure that if anything goes wrong, there's, for instance, exhibits missing from that safe, that SAP 13 responsible person will have to account for it.
Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says the country has procured every available dose of foot and mouth disease that is compatible to the South African situation. Steenhuisen briefed the media at Parliament on government's ongoing FMD vaccination rollout. He says in the past 3 months, 4.5 million of the 14 million national herd has been vaccinated. Steenhuisen says despite criticism, the country is trying to procure all vaccines it is able to.
And I want to make it clear to those critics who believe there's this big lake of vaccines out there that we have procured every single available strain and vaccine that matches the South African strain. There's not a single international supplier out there that is sitting with vaccines that they could immediately ship to South Africa. To date, we've received 6 million doses of foot and mouth disease vaccines with a clear roadmap for millions more to follow.
The Johannesburg Emergency Services says it remains on high alert and will be monitoring all 7 regions across the city as cold weather conditions are expected from today until tomorrow. EMS spokesperson Robert Mulaudzi has urged residents to be cautious when using heating devices such as heaters and paraffin stoves.
Residents are urged to exercise caution when using heating devices, things like heaters, paraffin stoves, not to leave them unattended while in use. Our residents are encouraged to call our Emergency Management Services Command and Control Center on 011-375-5911 for any life-threatening emergencies.
Sudan has recalled its ambassador to Ethiopia after accusing its neighbor as well as the United Arab Emirates of facilitating a drone strike on Khartoum International Airport. The BBC's Barbara Platt-Asher has the details.
Sudanese military and government officials say they have conclusive evidence that an RSF drone strike on the airport was launched from Ethiopian soil, and they say they reserve the right to respond at a time and place of their choosing. The Sudanese military first accused the RSF of firing drones from Ethiopian territory in March. Earlier, the Reuters news agency reported that Ethiopia was hosting an RSF training camp.
Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court judgment on the EFF's bid to revive the Phala Phala saga will be delivered on Friday. I'm Undalambana for SAFM News Headlines at 4:30.
In sports this hour, Hlungwane escalates Muti concerns to IFAB after Soweto Derby incident. Stormers ready for Augustus Power Test, and Soweto Marathon Trust hits back at Mackenzie over takeover. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Afternoon, some rain across Gauteng and roads on a bit of a go slow. The Mike One, a good example of that, going south Melrose right down to about Ormonde. It's traffic heading north. It's even worse. Melrose up through Buccleuch and all the way through about Olifantsfontein, just jam-packed on the M1 heading north. Also southbound from Buccleuch around towards Bayers Nordia, looking quite slow as well. Pretoria section, well, the N1 south is under pressure. There's a broken down vehicle just after Rigel Avenue, and that's got traffic queuing all the way back through towards Atterbury Road. Big crash scene north of Ladysmith on the N11. If you're moving between Ladysmith and Newcastle, quite heavy delays. It's just the collision scene is just north of Ladysmith and just south of the R602 exit there, or the junction, if you like, just around that junction on the south side of that Ladysmith. That's where there is quite a big backlog of traffic to work through today. Durban's Umgeta Road Spaghetti Junction N2 section looking fine. A bit of a queue on the N2 South though. Umhlanga making your way down towards Kwamashu. And Cape Town reasonably busy around the Newlands, Rondebosch, Claremont areas. Routes like Campground, Main Road and Belmont Road all very slow. And the M5 jamming up again from the Kuiper. Get a change. Still all the way down to the N2 outbound connection. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, love talking to winners. Okay, still to come, we'll chat to Dr. Lupivo Mduzana, who's a graduate head of the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine at the Walter Sisulu University. He's got quite a story that will inspire you. That comes up around 4:45. Listen out, 4:45, in fact, listen out for that. We'll also chat to Mbekizeli Benjamin, legal researcher at Judges Matter, about the significant appointment of Advocate Tembeka Mukatobi, appointed as an acting judge at the Court, becoming the first black advocate to serve in that role, right? Now, that comes up later on. First up, however, to add on to the conversations we've had around Africa as a continent, there's been lots of talk about anti-foreigner sentiment in South Africa. Well, are we in danger as a country of facing a diplomatic crisis, as in South Africa versus the rest of Africa? Question to you. And how do we handle that? Right after this.
This May, SAFM invites you to be exposed and engaged in a different conversation. Not the Africa you think you know, but the Africa that surrounds you. What does it mean to be African today? In our politics, in our economies, in our cross-border movements, in our rich cultures, in our evolving identities. Every day we traverse this continent. 54 countries, 54 unique stories, one shared future. From Lagos to Nairobi, Accra to Addis Ababa, and right here at home. Because South Africa is not separate from Africa. It is a vital part of it. SAFM Africa Month. Conversations, context, connection.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, you know, this issue of South Africa, or the people of South Africa, some people of South Africa, and foreign nationals, documented or undocumented, it's just not going to go away. Something has to happen. There needs to be an intervention, certainly from the government side, to show that they're taking action against undocumented foreign nationals, to allow those that are documented, living here legitimately, working here legitimately, to carry on all their work. Because what we've seen, especially in the last few weeks, protests are one thing, but there's also been many examples of people approaching others perceived as foreign nationals and literally asking them for their documentation. You know, if you go back to apartheid South Africa, it's like saying, "Was your pass," that type of thing, like prove who you are, right? I've seen that over and over again in the last few weeks, last few days, in fact, right? So with that in mind, there's been concerns from be it Ghana, be it Uganda, be it Malawi, be it Nigeria. All those countries have actually raised some serious questions to South Africa. Remember, South Africa, this country that has been on side against issues of human rights abuse anywhere in the world, right? So, question then is, how does South Africa navigate this? Could South Africa face a diplomatic crisis, a case of South Africa versus the rest? With me, Dr. Tenda Mbanje, who is the African governance expert at the University of Pretoria Centre for Human Rights. Dr. Mbanje, I appreciate you joining us on the National Pulse.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. First of all, let's start with this. How do you read what is unfolding at the moment in South Africa?
Generally, there is an agreement that the issues being raised by different groups, they are legitimate issues. But of course, people do not agree on the methodology, the manner in which the events are unfolding, violence, the killings, and so forth. I think that's unlawful. I mean, if you're looking at it from a legal point of view. But of course, the issues are very legitimate and the issues are acceptable, that people are raising genuine concerns which they want their government to act on. And obviously, the neighbors, the other African countries within SADC and as well as the African Union community, they are worried in the manner in which events are unfolding. That's why we are seeing increasingly leaders calling the regime in Pretoria to say they need to do something about this, and also to let them know their dissatisfaction about how the events are unfolding.
So what can Pretoria do? Because it's come against the backdrop of a perception that there are, well, first of all, high unemployment in South Africa. That's not a perception, that's a fact. It's come against the backdrop of a perception that there are far too many people, foreign nationals in South Africa, who are actually here undocumented, and those numbers are large. And it's also come across the backdrop of many foreign nationals who are documented are doing the type of basic, let's call it menial work that could easily be given to South Africans who are actually unemployed. That's the backdrop. That is why so many people at that level of the economic strata are the most threatened compared to those who are, working in banks and other professional institutes. They don't feel that because they're at a very, very different level in terms of expertise. So clearly something, an intervention of note has to happen beyond simply saying we do not support this.
Yes, certainly. I think the government needs to then review its policies, immigration policies, what is going wrong insofar as the immigration department is concerned. and then also looking at the employment laws, as well as to actually also do auditing and different kinds of sectors, so that they ensure that the interests of the citizens are protected. Surely, I think these are concerns that, especially when you're talking about menial work, things that South Africans can do, certainly they must be prioritized. 1 in 3 South Africans are unemployed, according to statistics. I checked a few days ago. It's sad. Definitely, they need to act on that. But how they go about it is what matters. They need to act swiftly, but also take into consideration that whoever is on South African soil must be treated with dignity, even if they are to be deported, even if they are to be action is taken to ensure that they comply with immigration laws. That must be within the confinements of the law. I think that is my perception.
What do you make then of the many people who called into talk shows like this, right, and others who are actually saying this is a powder keg, suggesting that in fact, if this issue, and they're speaking from a South African perspective, if this issue of undocumented foreign nationals is not resolved, it's a powder keg, it's going to explode, because it's all sorts of words and images, and you're just too scared to even consider that. Why do you think they would say that?
I think it's coming from desperation and hopelessness that has accumulated over the years, where they feel like the government gives them deaf ears. So I think it's high time, and luckily we have a GNU, which represent all political sectors within the country. I think a unified response to this, a collective response from government, I think will be very much appropriate. But also, it is high time also when the government needs to reflect, do self-introspection insofar as the ways in which they could fast track creation of employment and opportunities for its people. I think it's high time it has to review that and act also swiftly to ensure that, apart from the issues around undocumented foreign nationals and so forth, there is need for people are crying for economic opportunities which are scarce.
Let's then get back to the issues of diplomacy. What do you feel about the responses that have come from various countries, effectively asking questions of South Africa, and what do you think of the South African response so far?
I mean, they are asking questions. I've read. They're asking from a position of being concerned. They know that their counterpart, the South African government, South African leaders have the capacity and all it takes to contain the situation. So it's coming from a position of being concerned, and also it's not confrontational. Even though there is this escalation of violence and so forth, the diplomatic engagements that are happening. They are happening from a position of respect. So I think it's a good thing that Africans must speak to each other when there is something they don't agree with, and they're able to engage meaningfully in a very civilized way. I think it's a beautiful thing.
What's the one thing now that you'd like to see happen? Immediate term, short term, immediate term, and long term.
Immediate term, obviously, I would think that the issue must be addressed. Law enforcement obviously needs to do its work to be able to contain and to look for, to assess the immigration status of people, not citizens taking a law into their hands. And elections are coming. In the year of elections, a lot happens, but it's also a good opportunity that citizens' voices are ahead within any election. These issues of employment, resources, and so forth, they also speak to local government issues. So in the medium term, I think that it must shape politicians to respond, or in the government to respond adequately to the issues within the framework also that they are anticipating elections. Then in the longer term, it's really revisiting immigration laws, ensuring that there is efficiency in documentation and also efficiency in releasing those documents, and also in checking those documents. And law enforcement must be capacitated adequately to address those issues, and citizens must be discouraged at all costs to take the law into their hands.
Yeah, let's just talk about that as a last point. Citizens must be discouraged. What do you feel about the images where you're literally seeing citizens, and I saw one yesterday, maybe, people going to the mosque in Hillbrow, frequented mainly by foreign nationals, right? And literally going up to them and like, hey, you're Nigerian or you're Malawian, show me your documents. What do you feel about the fact that they think they're empowered enough to do that?
No, I think it's also coming from a position of, like I said, frustration and so forth. They are certainly not. There's a lot of misinformation. Many citizens cannot do the work that the law enforcement is supposed to do. There's need to engage those citizen leaders effectively and through the law enforcement to ensure that even if they're exercising their rights to demonstrate, their rights to protest, they must do it within the confinements of the law. This is a constitutional republic. It's known continentally for the respect of the rule of law, for the respect of human rights, and that must be anchored in any kind of demonstration, in any kind of protest. I think they need to be also be guided in the process.
And that's where we, Sean Leard, appreciate you sharing your insights with us, Dr. Rutenda Mbanja, the African governance expert at the University of Pretoria Centre for Human Rights. Now, what do you make of that conversation? Surely there may well be nuances, but there are lots of things to consider. That we have an issue, we have high unemployment, we have foreign nationals in the country, documented and undocumented. We have a dissatisfied public in large numbers who feel that it's their jobs that are being taken. The equation has to change, but the question is, how do you change it in a way that is peaceful and meaningful, as opposed to disruptive, that effectively then destabilizes a country? What for you, therefore, I often use this, what for you is the win-win situation?
EFC is live this Thursday. Two athletes at the height of their powers fight for more than victory. They fight for the fight itself. Zakir Badat, 8 wins, all finishes. Zico Makangela, 5 wins, 5 knockouts. Champion and former champion collide in African welterweight championship fight. EFC 133, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
In case you missed it.
You did not ask me my role when it comes to crime. That you did not ask. You asked me what are the criminal activities that I am noticing in government, which I did respond. You did not ask me what is the role that we are playing as community safety in government.
So what role are you playing, Tracy?
We have established the Community Safety Forum, which then we are going to collaborate with the SAPS.
Tracy Simela, MMC for Community Services at Govan Mbeki Municipality.
That was National Briefing this morning with Kathy Mutlatlana.
I tell you what, on our family WhatsApp group, there's one conversation right now, which is the price of petrol going up, as you know, +3, above 3 rands, as it did last month. And this is because of the economic, political issues that are happening in the Middle East and how it affects the world. So it's a huge, huge cause for concern. When I speak to someone and that person says, I'll come and visit you for some things, but I may come less than often because, you know what, I've got to consider my petrol costs right now. There we are. Things have changed. Now, cutting your own grass saves money. But you could really save by switching to Outsurance Essential Car Insurance. Made for older cars, 51-year-old Evelina pays only 474 rands a month for her 2013 Hyundai 130, and there's no upfront excess payable, so no unexpected out-of-pocket payments. Get Outsurance Essential Car Insurance today for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. SMS car to SMS car to 43185. You got that? Car 43185. Outsurance, licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's and information online.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, there's been lots of conversations in the last few hours about the appointment of Advocate Tembeka Mokatobi, appointed as an acting judge at the Constitutional Court. That may be the normal course of events, but he's had quite a stellar career, very highly regarded. But also, in this case, the first black advocate to serve now in this role, even if it's acting as well. So let's talk about his story. How does one get to that level? How significant is his appointment even now? Mbekizeli Benjamin is a legal researcher at Judges Matter. As always, thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, first of all, I mean, the reporting from yesterday talks about significant, historic groundbreaking. Is that the case?
It is indeed. As you rightly mentioned, that he's the first black advocate to be appointed as an acting judge straight from legal practice. But it's also quite rare that it happens that someone is appointed as an advocate to act on the Constitutional Court. And in fact, I was looking in the 25 years between 1998 and 2023, there was no one who was appointed. And only in 2023, there were two advocates, and then since then there have been none. So it's a rare occurrence. And for the fact that he's the first black advocate to be appointed, even if it's temporary, is quite significant.
Let's start with the temporary. How temporary is this?
So he's appointed for 6 months from the beginning of June all the way to the end of November, and probably stretching into December if there's any outstanding judgment. But it is over the course of 2 terms, because the Constitutional Court has a term that usually starts at the end of winter, so towards the end of July, beginning of August. It goes all the way to the end of September, and then the final term starts in the middle of October until the end of November. So there are 2 terms that he will serve, and it's for a period of around 6 months, give or take.
Okay, so bottom line, essentially at the end, till the end of the year, right?
Yes, until the end of the year.
Okay, so you're saying that even that's temporary, it's still significant. Why? I mean, yes, we know South Africa's apartheid history, right? But it still begs the question: 3 decades plus into democracy, we're still talking about the first black this, the first black that. I mean, that's interesting, even in the legal fraternity.
Yes, it is. I mean, it is significant, Ashraf, because for the longest time, black lawyers have not been exposed to the kind of work that will prepare you for a spot on the Constitutional Court. And Tembeka Mokatobi is one of the few that does sort of buck that trend, in the sense that he is an expert in constitutional law and in administrative law. He's also an expert in land law, but in addition to that, he's also an expert in competition law, which is still an area of the law where very, very few black people practice. And so it is significant, and it comes entirely from his experience as a lawyer that he's now been put forward for the Constitutional Court. But it also in some ways is an indictment on the legal profession in South Africa, that so few black people are able to amass that kind of experience.
Let's then talk about Advocate Tembeka Mokatobi himself. I mean, talk to me about his journey.
So he has quite an interesting journey. He comes from the rural Eastern Cape. In fact, his first law degree was done at the former University of Transkei, which is today called University Walter Sisulu. And he then went on to do his LLB at Rhodes University and his master's degree at the London School of Economics in the UK. He returned to South Africa, did his clerkship at the Constitutional Court, and so it is a bit of a full circle now that he's an acting justice there. But I think the other thing that is significant is that he was one of the few black people to make partner at Bowman's, which is one of the big law firms in the country. And then later on, when he became an advocate, he is one of the fastest people to go from starting at the bar to becoming silk. He did it in less than 10 years. On average, you need a minimum of 15 years for you to get to silk, and he did it in less than 10 years. So he has quite an illustrious career even up to this point, and that's why we see him involved in many of the big cases in the country.
And what for you, outside the obvious literal body of his legal work, do you think gives him the edge? What has got him ahead?
Well, I think it's just his expertise and his intellect. I mean, he is obviously an expert in the law, but he's also a public intellectual. He's written books on the history of the legal profession in South Africa. He's written books about the land question in South Africa. He's one of the foremost leading experts on the land question, not just from a legal perspective, but just from a public and social history perspective. So he does have an edge. But I think the most important and most significant thing about his appointment to the Constitutional Court is that he'll be adding quite significant experience to the court at the time when it really, really does need it. The Constitutional Court has not been performing as effectively as we wish it would. And so it is good that these are the kinds of people that are being considered even for acting appointments.
Okay. And the question then is that, and very quickly, that acting period will come to an end at the end of the year. Then what do you think? What happens next for him?
So, he will go back to legal practice. But for the Constitutional Court, it will still have one vacancy because there's a judge who's retiring this year. There are two more judges retiring next year. And so the JC now has to go on a search looking to fill those vacancies, and we hope they will do so as quickly as possible.
Okay, and that's where we can leave it. Appreciate your time. Mbekizeli Benjamin, legal researcher at Judges Matter, reflecting on this stellar career, the rise of Advocate Tembeka Mokaitobi. There we are. How much do you know about him? I mean, maybe just besides us talking, just look at what he's done. It's quite remarkable. 4:30, here's the news headlines with Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, Hog's head of serious organized crime investigations, Hendrik Flynn, has told the Madlanga Commission that the theft of cocaine from Hog's premises in Port Shepstone, KwaZulu-Natal was by design. The Western Cape Department of Education has announced that all schools in George, Knysna and Oudtshoorn will be closed tomorrow and Thursday, and there are increasing fears of hostilities resuming in the Gulf after Washington tried to force open the Strait of Hormuz for commercial shipping. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hoos.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Some heavy traffic around Pretoria's N1 corridor. Broken down vehicles both sides. The big delay is going south from Linwood Road down to a breakdown just after Rigel, but then northbound a broken down vehicle near Atterbury Road causing a backlog heading up from the R21 highway. So pretty solid both ways. Also, Eski and Pathweli and Paul Kruger leaving the city centre heading north, really busy. A lot of traffic around Joburg with some rain this afternoon. N1 south Buccleuch down to Bayers Nordia. N3 Buccleuch down to Germiston. Mike 1 from Houghton all the way up to Buccleuch and onto about Samrand before you're really out of the traffic, and southbound Santon through to Boysons is the damage there. Big crash northern parts of KZN. It's between Ladysmith and Newcastle, just between the Pepworth and 602 exits, so just north of Ladysmith. It is a collision with multiple fatalities, and there's some quite heavy backlogging both directions there. Durban's N2 south coming through Umhlanga towards Komashu, that's heavy. Also in Nunda Road off Seacow Lake heading out towards the N2, that's quite busy today. And Cape Town, Norwood Road in the Norwood area, that's being closed due to a crime scene at Epping Avenue. N2 outbound fairly slow from the end of the elevated freeway all the way through to Bunga Avenue, and a lot of traffic in the Rondebosch Rosebank area this afternoon. Both Belmont and the main road looking fairly heavy. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Tubi, you want to raise an age-old question regarding South African football. Tell me about that.
Well, former PSL and FIFA-accredited referee Victor Tlongwane has confirmed writing to IFAB over concerns regarding the alleged use of black magic in local football. IFAB, which is the independent guardian of the laws of the game, where FIFA holds 50% of the voting power, could now be asked to provide clarity on how such incidents should be handled within the rules. Tlongwane says that the decision followed the recent Soweto derby clash between Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, where tensions flared prior to kick-off over accusations of multi-use.
FIFA invites anyone to write to them special on law changes that are implemented every year. So now when they invite everyone to write, I took advantage of saying, I've seen something that is wrong in our game, whereby people are fighting, there's confrontation over the smearing of multi or chemical engineering or black poison or black magic. So now you remember the countries that write this book are English speaking. Scotland, Ireland, England, and Wales. So those are called UK. Those are the people who started the loss of the game in 1863. So after seeing the confrontation where people fought inside the field of play, I felt the need to reduce this. And after looking at the World Cup rules that they are saying, when you cover your mouth, you should be red-carded. When you leave the field of play, you should be red-carded. Why not write to them and say, hey, when you smear some black magic on the field of play, you should also be red-carded. So I wrote and sent the video as well. So now we're waiting for FIFA. If FIFA deems it fit to change or to put it in the law that anyone who smear things, some people put salt on the field of play, and that salt is damaging the grass. It's dangerous to the players. But the smearing of the other chemicals is also not good because it's causing confrontation between club officials.
Well, then, it's Champions League tonight, and Arsenal hosts Atletico Madrid in the second leg of the Champions League semi-final. The two sides are level heading into today's game, having drawn the first leg 1-1 in Madrid last week. And whichever team that wins today will face either Bayern Munich or PSG in the Champions League final on the 30th of May. In terms of athletics, Stan Itsegetseng, who says he represents the Soweto Marathon Trust, has criticized Sports Minister Gaten McKenzie over plans for government to take over the troubled race. Speaking to SABC Sport, he rejected the idea, even though the minister wants to help by paying outstanding prize money and taking action against previous organizers. Itsegetseng called the takeover unrealistic and also warned that it could lead to conflict, insisting that government cannot simply take control of the race. He also said that the event's absence from the Central Gauteng athletics calendar is not a major issue, as approval is just formality. Meanwhile, a record number of people, 1.3 million, have applied to participate at the 2027 London Marathon via the public ballot. The 2026 marathon had a record of just over 59,000 finishes and was the biggest annual one-day fundraising event in the world. The ballot results will be released early in July, with places allocated through a random draw, and it is the first time that more than 1 million applications from the UK alone have been submitted, and there was near parity in male and female registrations. In terms of rugby, the Stormers are bracing for a familiar challenge when they face Ulster in round 17 of the URC on Friday night. Former Stormers number 8, Juarno Augustus, who scored in Ulster's European semi-final win over Exeter, has impressed with 3 tries in 15 outings this season. And forwards coach Rito Hlongwane says that Augustus' ball-carrying power adds an extra layer to Ulster's attack, and the Cape side must be ready to neutralise his physical edge. In terms of cricket, New Zealand great Sophie Devine says that she wishes she had played Test cricket, calling it the ultimate format as she prepares to retire after the Women's T20 World Cup in England and Wales. The 36-year-old all-rounder will end a 20-year international career alongside Susie Bates and Lita Huhu, having scored nearly 8,000 runs and taken 239 wickets. Now, Devine, who led the White Ferns to the 2024 T20 World Cup title, also spoke candidly about her mental health journey, saying openness has helped normalize conversations for athletes. I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And all those numbers, it's Markwem Masilela. You've got news about AB InBev, Markwem.
Yes, Ashraf, the world's largest brewer, their Q1 profits jumped 21% to a record high and beating estimates. The guys managed to beat forecast on every tracked metric. Revenue up 5.8%, overall financial performance as EBITDA also up 5%. 5%, volume up 0.8%. They expected a decline of 0.5%. The first ever volume increase since 2023. Record Q1 volumes when it comes to the likes of Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Peru, and South Africa. And non-beer volumes fell 1.9%. Share price is up 8%. And market participants digesting the latest developments in the Iran war as a fragile ceasefire between US and Iran was appearing to be close to collapse. Renewed Middle East tensions yesterday threatened to inject fresh volatility into markets after a month-long rally in risk assets that helped global equities to erase war-related losses. Investors remain focused on the Strait of Hormuz. Even if the immediate conflict de-escalate, Ashraf, most market participants expect the aftershocks to remain for some time. And locally, our central bank governor said we are experiencing the biggest jump when it comes to fuel price inflation, and that's in the history of inflation targeting, with food prices being a bigger problem. And later in the session, relative calm returned to the global markets, with stocks rising as signs that a US-Iran ceasefire is still in place, and that reduced the fears about a full-scale war that could hamper the economic outlook. Gold prices ticked higher, bouncing back after hitting a more than 1 month low. That's in the previous session, but gains were muted as elevated oil prices kept the outlook for interest rates uncertain. Gold is up 1%, $4,569. Platinum also up 1%, $1,968. Oil prices fell, but still more than 60% up since the start of the war, after the U.S. said Iran's ceasefire remains in place, and that's despite the UAE attacks. And we see Brent crude is down 1.5% at $111. Global stocks got a boost from oil pulling back, with the JSE up 0.5%, the Rand firm 0.8% against the dollar 16.64, 22.57 against the pound, and 19.46 against the euro.
Okay, thanks for all that, Makwe. We'll connect tomorrow. We have an hour of the markets coming up from 6 to 7 this evening with Jimmy Moyaha, so stick around for that too.
Wherever you are in the world, SAFM 104 to 107 is accessible. We're also streaming live on Facebook, X, and YouTube at SAFM Radio. We acknowledge and appreciate everyone tuning in and watching our streams. Stay with SAFM 104 to 107 as we bring you Commission Live, breaking stories, and thought-provoking lectures. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, talking about being connected to the National Pulse, lovely seeing a tweet from Imlumali Georgiasi saying, driving back home, listening to the National Pulse on SFM with Ashraf Garda. And I can see a picture of the car, dashboard. It's raining. I can see. Are you in the Eastern Cape? I'm just guessing. Maybe. But thanks for the picture. And wherever you are in the country, driving, listening, wherever you are, send us a picture. You can tweet it out. You can also send it on our WhatsApp messages as well. We'll certainly pick it up. Right, let's get reaction. And I can tell you now two things. Diplomacy, South Africa and the rest of the African continent regarding foreign nationals, and the issue of Fadil Adams, top of the agenda that moves the conversation for the day. Sitle, go in Umlazi, hi.
Hello. The National Pulse.
How's it, man? Good indeed. Go for it. What's your point?
Yeah, about Fadil Adams, I was also going to say, like what most of people have been saying about how if you are going against what Mkhwanazi is saying, or let's not put it like that, if you are going against Mkhwanazi, then clearly there's something criminal about you. There's something corrupt about you. There's something not right about you. And when you look at this thing, Mkhwanazi is going to drop evidence. And then Fadil Adams is just going to drop like the vulgar language. He's just going to say all those things, but he's not going to bring anything to the table, you know. And what worries me the most about him visiting this hitman, it's why was it not disclosed? Or can I just confirm that first? Was it disclosed? Did he disclose it? Because if he didn't...
When you say why was it not disclosed, disclosed by whom?
Like him, Fadil Adams.
Well, that's the point.
That seems like such a big thing to not disclose as a member of parliament when there are people who voted for you, and then you just go see a hitman is such a high-profile person and you don't tell anyone. So that's quite shady.
All
so
right.
I think that's what I have to say for me. Thank you.
Okay, your point, quite shady is what you say. Michael in Durban, What's your point, Michael?
Ashraf, how are you?
I'm good indeed. Good to talk to you, Michael.
Thanks for your guest for balanced views.
Which guest are you referring to?
The one that was speaking on African diaspora or something.
Okay, all right, good. I'm glad you think so. Thank you.
He gave a very fair, balanced view. I support his view. But I'd hear you asking the question, how should be done? Simple. Legal one, we accept them. Illegal one, we don't accept them. That's all. Then these other countries and other African countries, they must try to resolve their problem internally, not using South Africa. There's a solution.
All right, so I think, many would be on side on that. There's a legitimate claim to say, why does this take that long? How can you just allow, right? That I understand. On the other hand, can we... Okay, on the other hand, can we sympathize, can we empathize with people that wants to go to another country legitimately? I'm using the word legitimately because they see a better life for themselves, and this happens around the world. All of us.
I fully agree with you.
Whatever their reasons are, and sometimes people come to study and they don't go back home.
The problem, Ashraf, is the few that spoil the rest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These things are the ones that spoil the rest of other African brothers. That's all.
Okay, got that. Thanks for that point, Michael in Durban. What else? What about you? What's your point? Montwedi in Alberton, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good indeed. I want to hear your point. Good. Tell me.
Okay, firstly, the question is, from African point of view, other countries, what are they saying when their own go into South Africa without documentation? What are they saying? Whereby when South Africans rise up and say, but this is not right, then they will say, hey, South Africa is xenophobic, blah, blah, blah. What is Nigeria saying with its own coming to South Africa without documentation, coming to South Africa selling drugs? What are they saying? What is Zimbabwe saying when the whole of its people are into South Africa, legally or illegally? But what are they saying whereby at some point we had a load shedding? The whole Africa knows that we had a strain in energy. Now, you take the whole lot of people coming to South Africa. They need electricity. They need water. They are not working. They're going to come and do any water. What way is that? But my point is, what is Africa say when they are all come to South Africa without documentation? Are you saying there's no home affairs in Zimbabwe?
So if you're saying those countries that are aware of their nationals having left their country and gone to South Africa illegally, we're talking about illegally, you're saying those countries are not pronouncing on that at all, and that's wrong. They should be saying,
not.
How do you do that?
Yes, they're not. Did you hear anything in Nigeria saying to its people, don't go to South Africa without documentation? Did you ever say Mnangagwa saying Zimbabweans, don't go to South Africa without documentation? No, they're quiet. It's okay, it's business as usual. But when South Africa rise up and say, but this is not right, then we are pointing a finger at South Africans, yeah, they are xenophobic, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But Africa, okay, we talk of African Renaissance, African Union, but is it only Africa when it comes to South Africa only? What about...
All right, I think you made your point and you made it very, very clearly. Appreciate that, right? Maybe one more call I can take now. Malusi in Germiston, you want to talk about the virus. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, yes. How are you, Ashraf?
I'm good indeed. Thank you.
South Africans, yes.
Thank you.
I'm a bit worried because now I hear the minister says people mustn't be worried about this Hansa virus.
Mm-hmm.
But, this has been going on for over a long time because people are told not to worry, whereas people all the time, again on the fuel issue. The minister came on air to say that people mustn't be worried. But we're sitting up with shortages. Why are we always put on the back foot? And the other thing that I see now, it seems South Africa has become that dump site. Everybody's dumping everything to South Africa. That's my point.
Yeah, okay, your line's just dropped off completely, so we lost that last part. But I hear what you're saying. They say we mustn't get worried, but you're saying you're worried about that, right? Thank you for that. By the way, really cold weather, Eastern Cape, parts of the Western Cape as well, lots of storms. And I know many other parts of the country also, temperatures have dropped and rain. So please be careful, especially for those who are on the roads. It's not a time to have bravado, let's put it that way. Michael in Quebec, hi.
Afternoon, Ashraf. About
how's the weather,
Africa's,
Michael? How's the weather where you are?
It's very cold, and it is going to get extremely cold.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it is going to get extremely cold. Yes, you
Thank
can feel it in your bones.
Oh, goodness. Okay, what's your point?
Yeah. Africa's development, since it's Africa's month, as they say. Africa's problem is that of visionary leadership. That's all what it is. Visionary leadership. Selfless visionary leadership. The mineral resources that Africa has, no continent has. So it's just a question of visionary leadership. That's it. If you take a person like Lee Kuan Yew, exactly, from a backward city-state to Singapore, a phenomenon.
But you see, what it needs visionary leadership, and it needs to, but the power to convince people to follow your way is an important role that you play as a leader, whether it's a political leader, whether it's a business leader. If people don't buy into your idea, then the vision is dead, isn't it?
But why do you think people don't buy into the idea? Because we are being forced to develop in a structure that was used to colonize us.
I don't know. I think the history of the world talks about people don't buy ideas because they're skeptical. And I'm even talking religiously, from the different faiths. Follow their stories. People reject them initially. Michael, but you made your point. I think it's an important one anyway. Michael in Tebecha. Right, let's talk about someone who's certainly been very, very visionary. Dr. Lupiwo Imduzana. Next.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
All right, once in a while we need to talk about winners and champions in their field. So here's the case with Dr. Lupiwo Mduzana, who's a graduate, just recent, head of the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine at the Walter Sisulu University, but significantly graduating with a PhD at Stellenbosch University, which then made him the first black medical orthodontist and prosthetist in South Africa to obtain a PhD. Or in this case, I said orthodontist, not orthotist, right? So in that space, quite significant. Dr. Mduzana, I appreciate you joining us here on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners. Thank you for inviting me.
So, I mean, you are in an interesting space in terms of the the medical space. Tell me, first of all, why you chose that space.
Ashraf, thank you so much. I think briefly the space chose me. Serving or working in the health sector, it needs one to be selfless, and it needs one who wants to better the services. Because if it's not a calling, you struggle to do service delivery, and you struggle to even progress. And because, for example, in the case where I've managed to study further, it is not for me, but it is for the people that I'm going to serve. It is for bettering the services in the country.
But do I take it that in the community that you come from, you may have seen the need for that? I mean, the issues of prosthetics and how important that is. Was there something that happened that you observed and said, I think I need to get into the space, I need to make a difference here?
Ashraf, on the contrary, I wanted to become a geologist, but something in engineering. However, my mother wanted me to become a doctor. I did go to medical school, but we were not occurring well with the degree. But eventually, I ended up doing medical orthotics and prosthetics in Tanzania. And what I learned from the program, and what I then appreciated and really thought it was a calling, it's because medical orthotics and prosthetics, it's more like a combination of medicine and engineering. So in what we do, we manufacture these devices for people that have been amputated, or people that have been born with some deformities, or people that get to have deformities later in life. And for us to be able to then manufacture these or engineer these devices, we need to know the anatomy, the physiology of the person, the structure of the body. And then we then design and engineer either a prosthetic leg or a prosthetic arm or a brace to hold deformity or to support in the case of an injury. So for me, it was a combination of both worlds, and I'm loving it.
Okay. Now let's then talk about, I mean, your historic journey. I mean, you're in a space where black experts in the field are very small in numbers, and I understand that because there's been this historical deficit that one is to make up. So the fact that you come through as this first black medical orthotist and prosthetist in South Africa, obtaining a PhD, what do you feel about how significant that is for you and perhaps the people that you represent?
Thanks, Ashraf. In fact, I was listening to you when you're talking to Mr. Mbegezil about Advocate Toby.
We're talking about you there. I get that, yeah.
And it so happened that I also come from the same town. We both come from Kala in the Eastern Cape. It is, for me, how I see this is that, those that came before me, the system could not allow them to do these different courses, if I may put it that way, like orthotics and prosthetics. They only had to do teaching, nursing. The courses were limited. And I do believe that if opportunities were there before, we wouldn't be talking of first black medical orthotist prosthetists with a PhD degree in 2026. But how I take this then, particularly in my position as the head of department, because my job now is to make sure that I produce future competent and skillful medical orthotist prosthetists that are able to serve the people with passion and dedication. So this qualification for me, it's more like an inspiration to any child who does medical orthotics and prosthetics to want to, in fact, to be proud of the profession and also want to elevate the profession in the country to another level.
I'm looking at two parts. One is, just how it's changed life for you and your family personally. The other is just your specific role in terms of your thesis. We'll talk about that first, developing guidelines, in this case, clinical guidelines for lower limb prosthetic prescription. It's something perhaps we take for granted. Tell me about that thesis and why that was important to you.
Thanks, Ashraf. So one of the difficulties we face in the public sector it's because that when it comes to prescription of prosthetic legs, you find that there's a backlog. Now, we struggle to know how to then group the people that want to give the legs. And in South Africa, we do not have an evidence-based tool that we could use to screen the people. Now, when you talk orthotics and prosthetics, from what we use to manufacture these prosthetic legs, we import it. So it means we take it from abroad, either Germany, but we don't manufacture those in South Africa. Now, also when it comes to the tools that we use, the medical tools that we use, like for example, the screening tool, when you go to a hospital for a diagnosis to be made, a practitioner has to go through certain steps to say, I did this and that and that and that. Now, when it came to prosthetics and orthotics, the ones we use in South Africa are similar to our components. We use one formulated in the US. So mine was, we know our context. We know where our people come from. You cannot then screen me the way you would screen a person in a first world country. Hence, I then based my research on saying the gist is the context. If you go to Kala, the roads are not the same as you'd find them in Germany. People there, they walk down the mountain, up the mountain. So when you screen that person who comes from that particular situation, and also some, they walk in small doors, so the context is vastly different. So mine was to say, we need to screen either amputees but we need to use tools that are context specific. For me, that was very important, having worked in the public sector.
Absolutely. I think the absolute sheer relevance, and that's why many people from other countries have come to Beira to actually study for that reason, to understand the complexities in certain environments. People from Europe have done that, I know. Just the last thing, very, very quickly, how has your personal success impacted on your family? How has it changed their lives?
I wouldn't say it hasn't changed our lives, but we always thank God for the mercies and the blessings. Like I've said, this is not my achievement alone. It's for my community. It's for my colleagues in the field. it's for my students, it's for all aspiring young kids who aspire to become something great one day. So for me, I don't view this as my personal achievement because for me to achieve this, I had people behind me, people that supported me, that helped me, who believed that I could do it when I could not believe myself. And it's quite a remarkable achievement. And I know in a few years to come, there will be more black medical authorities, prosthetists that would have their PhDs.
Okay, well, the doors have been open, so to speak. Appreciate your time and lovely talking to a champion. I can tell you now, Dr. Lupivo Imduzana. There we are. Top of his game. That's the bottom line. Let's get some comments from you regarding, well, another person who's top of his game.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Peter from Bloemfontein. I think we need to congratulate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi. Black excellence. I remember when I arrived at Walter Sisulu University in 1997, he was the president of the SRC and president of SASCO. I couldn't believe he was very tiny. But at the auditorium, when he speaks, everybody gets silent. Yeah, that guy is brilliant. He deserves everything. We should just congratulate him.
Well, there you are. When he speaks, essentially everybody listens. Here's one on Fadil Adams.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Lennon Khwedie. Fidel Adams had this coming for him for a long, long time because we knew when he was making Lavaya about him, Mkhwanazi, and alleging and calling Mkhwanazi constitutional delinquent and all of these things, and he can't be touched by him because he's from Cape Town, city of legends, and all this thing, blah, 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 blah. This is what is coming to him. He must go and prove to the magistrate that he's from the city of legend and it's clear. Lennon Khwedi.
Well, Lennon's made his point. Okay, more to come on other issues. And also your reactions, so keep them coming. I certainly like your comments, first-time listeners too. And by the way, if you are in a weather atrocious, adverse weather conditions anywhere in the country, and if you're up to sending us your pictures, you can tweet it out or you can send us a WhatsApp comment. I certainly like to see it as well if you're up for that. 5 o'clock, it's Greg host time. Here's the news.
Thank you, Ashraf. Hawks head testifies on cocaine theft and fears of renewed hostilities in the Gulf region. Good day to you. The Hawks head of serious organised crime investigations, Hedrick Flynn, has told the Madlanga Commission that the theft of cocaine from Hawks premises in Port Shepstone on the KwaZulu-Natal south coast was by design. He's concluded his testimony for the day and is expected to return tomorrow. Commission spokesperson Mbuyiseli Madlanga.
The cocaine was not stored at the Maiden Wharf, at Brighton Beach, at Umbilo, or at Durban Central. The furthest of which is Durban Central, is only 24 kilometers from Isipingo. Fifth, there is no explanation why the Port Shepstone storage, which is 100 kilometers from Isipingo, was chosen. And sixth, on your evidence, General Sinona did not follow the prescripts with regard to the handling of keys.
The Black Conveyances Association says it supports the new legal sector code as it redresses the disparities of the past in the sector. It says it stands with the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition on the new code, which sets transformation targets for law firms and advocates. The association's Pumlin Kwangu.
We are here today to say we are supporting the legal sector code, which seeks to redress those racial injustices that have been inherited into our system from the apartheid years, which we still experience even today. So today it's day 2. We are here at court. The main bone of contention, amongst other things that are going to come out of court, is the issue of the ownership.
The Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says the country will have received 15 million foot and mouth disease vaccine doses by the end of this month. In the past 3 months, 4.5 million of the 14 million national herd has been vaccinated. The minister briefed the media on government's ongoing vaccine rollout.
By the end of May, we would have imported, during the course of the period from March to the end of May, 15 million vaccines. Given the fact that the size of the national herd is 14 million, and the fact that we obviously need to do another round of vaccination, if one looks at the timelines and the large numbers of vaccines that are now able to be accessed through our partners in Dolvet and Biogenesis Bago, we will be well on track to be able to meet our targets.
The Western Cape Department of Education has announced that all schools in George, Knysna and Oudtshoorn will be closed tomorrow and Thursday. This as municipalities in the Garden Route and Little Karoo regions brace themselves for a storm surge predicted to hit the region from this evening until Thursday. Provincial Education Minister David Manier.
The affected schools have received official notice of the closure from the head of department and have been requested to communicate the closures to parents. All other schools in the Western Cape will be open unless approval has been granted for closure, which will be done on a case-by-case basis. Our default position is always to keep schools open and only to close schools in exceptional circumstances.
There are increasing fears of hostilities resuming in the Gulf after the U.S. tried to force open the Strait of Hormuz for commercial shipping. Yesterday, the U.S. military said 2 American-flagged merchant ships sailed through the strait. In its response, Iran's parliamentary speaker warned that breaches of the ceasefire have endangered shipping and energy transit. The BBC's Yolande Nell has more.
President Trump's Project Freedom is continuing for a second day, but it remains to be seen whether it will break Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz or lead to a renewal of full-scale war. Iran's parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Bagher Kalibouf, wrote on X that the security of shipping and the transit of energy had been jeopardized by the US and its allies through what he said was a violation of the ceasefire and the imposition of a naval blockade on Iran. Iran has already reacted angrily, deploying cruise missiles and drones in an attempt to thwart the US mission.
The top story, the Hawks head of serious organised crime investigations has told the Madlanga Commission that the theft of cocaine from Hawks premises in Port Shepstone in KZN was by design. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goss.
In sports this hour, Sports Ministry names 16 fans for all expenses paid FIFA World Cup. Mashimbi hails leases maturity at the top and next crash sixes and extend historic run. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a heavy one across Gauteng highways due to some wet weather conditions to accompany the drive home. The N1 in Pretoria really heavily backed up. A crash on the M1 north at Rigel Avenue. Queues coming through from Centurion. Also motorists going south having a look at that. So very heavy coming through from Linwood Road all the way down to Rigel Avenue as well. The Mike 1 south from Sandton jammed all the way to Boyson's. The N1 from Buccleuch down to 14th Avenue is gridlocking. And even the N3 north going slow from Germiston for connections into Galilee's interchange. Earlier crashing north of Ladysmith on your way towards Newcastle seemed to be clear. That traffic backlog has made its way through today. Collision going into Durban on the N3 inbound just by Spaghetti Junction. So coming through from Pavilion Mall, that's quite slow. There is some rain across Durban as well, just keeping traffic volumes up and speeds down. Also quite heavy getting out of Durban on the N3 from around Berea. It's very slow. There's a break before you get to Pavilion Mall, so heading out through Spaghetti Junction, that's heavy. Umgeda Road through Springfield Park, all jammed up towards the N2 as well. Cape Town today, the N1 in and outbound towards Kuburg interchange, very heavy. M3 coming in from Newlands is tight all the way through to Hospital Bend, and a lot of traffic out through Sabrown Park this afternoon. Klipfontein Road, heavy down to Jan Smuts. Baden-Powell, a crash heading away from Musenberg at Strandfontein, and Baden-Powell closed at the bottom of Khayelitsha due to protest action. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Interesting as there are long queues, I understand, at petrol stations because, you know, this price hike this time round above 3 rands, last month also above 3, so it's really been massive. But here's the contradiction. As that happens, there's also now confirmation, maybe it's not a contradiction, of a 35% drop with regard to fuel spending. So although the costs are more, there's less actually being spent on fuel per se, which means people are not filling up. Interesting indeed. We'll talk about that later. But how's this one? What do South Africa's mayors think about themselves? If they have to give themselves a scorecard, what would they score themselves? That's what happened with a survey put together, which by News 24, I understand, which is really fascinating. We'll talk about that next.
This May, SAFM invites you to be exposed and engaged in a different conversation. Not the Africa you think you know, but the Africa that surrounds you. What does it mean to be African today? In our politics, in our economies, in our cross-border movements, in our rich cultures, in our evolving identities. Every day we traverse this continent. 54 countries, 54 unique stories, one shared future. From Lagos to Nairobi, Accra to Addis Ababa, and right here at home. Because South Africa is not separate from Africa. It is a vital part of it. SAFM Africa Month. Conversations, context, connection.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, you often get these scorecards. I mean, the Mail and Guardian's famous for that, where they give this annual report card of all the cabinet ministers, right? And that's fascinating because I keep the supplement and I keep it for the entire year. So that's one thing. But News 24 did something very interesting. They asked mayors, metropolitan mayors, to score themselves. And this happened a few days ago during the President's Coordinating Council meeting. And amongst the metro mayors they spoke to, Dada Morero of the city of Joburg, Cyril Kaba, who leads the Tegwini, Kuruleni's Nkosindipile Plaza, Mangaung's Metro's Gregory Intatisi, as well as Babalwa Lubisha, who leads the Nelson Mandela May, to rate themselves. Now, of course, I understand it's not all political parties, as you're well aware of it. But having said that, firstly, we'll get reaction in a moment. This is how that conversation went.
If you had to rate your mayor and score them for performance based on service delivery, governance, and the state of affairs in your municipality, what exactly would you rate them? News 24 asked at least 5 mayors at the Birchwood Hotel this week what score they would rate themselves for performance and leading a municipality. And this is what they had to say.
I think against what I was supposed to perform on, which in the main is focusing on the water infrastructure, by law enforcement, we can rate ourselves at least 8 to 10. I think we're getting there. More time was needed for us to get through some of the hurdles.
Well, we've done pretty well. I'm sure out of scoring, our communities will certainly give me a distinction. That's an excellent performance. On all the critical areas, I'm sure I will score above 80%. In fact, if you look on the aspect of service delivery, the type of interventions that we've done, we've introduced a system, a dashboard that is able to, now, report on real time, what is happening across our communities.
Well, I would rate myself at 80%.
Seriously, why?
Because I know I'm on top of things in terms of attending to my core functions.
Well, I give myself average, you see, because I can see where I'm going. And that when I come next time, just give me a few months, I will actually show you that we've exceeded even our own expectations. And I'm really working to go beyond average as we speak. Average, of course, being 5 and above 5. I'm getting there. I don't want really to tell people that I'm still excelling, because it requires a lot of change management on the part of our staff.
I'll give myself 6 out of 10. I've got
governance that's working. I've got institutional stability that are in place. I'm working on stabilizing my finances, and I'm unraveling issues of service delivery, and all those are critical. And if you rate them, you will really place you at a point where you can safely say the metro is working.
Well, there you are. What would you... Well, the mayors have rated themselves. What would you rate the same mayors? Some gave themselves a 6, others gave themselves a 10 as well. Let's find out more about it. With me is Siyamthanda Qapa, who's the SABC, not SABC, News 24 journalist, in fact. Siyamthanda, thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashraf. Hi.
Hi. First of all, I think you may have heard my intro. We've had others where, media houses like yourself and maybe in Mail and Guardian would effectively score, cabinet ministers, but it's very rare we ask them to rate themselves. First of all, tell me, did that come across just spontaneous, or was it a planned question to ask them?
It was spontaneous. I was at the event. They were all there. I was disappointed because GHL, Jonathan Lewis of City of Cape Town, wasn't there. He sent someone else. I don't know who. I reached out to Nasipi Moyo of City of Tshwane. She declined to comment. And the Buffalo City Mayor, Princess Fago, also declined. But all these guys were here. And we're going into elections. And I was curious because I have my own views about scoring them. I know some of the things that are happening in their metros and municipalities. But I wanted to know, what do they think of their performance? And so spontaneously I asked them.
Okay, well, I think well done to you for starters. It just shows you, ask a good question, you're going to get a good answer, whether you believe it or not, right? So let's talk about it. What came through?
Listen, a lot of it was surprising. As you can hear in the conversation with Babalwa Lobishe, she gave herself an 80, and I was genuinely surprised. I asked her, seriously, why would you score yourself that? And this is because of some of the things that are coming out of Nelson Mandela Bay. Corruption, city managers have been on suspension for years, irregular expenditure. We are all aware of what's happening there, and yet she believes she's performing at such a high rate. The same with Dada Morero, Joburg's mayor. He's also very well reported on the challenges in the city of Joburg, and yet he believes he's doing well.
How much did he rate himself?
He rated himself an 8
Sure.
out of 10.
Mm.
Yeah, no. Very.
Did he give reasons why? Like why does he self-rate himself an 8?
He says that he believes that he's delivered on the immediate interventions that he was supposed to bring, and he actually quoted water, which was quite ironic because we had a water crisis in Feb, and some areas still don't have water, and he believes that he's doing well in that regard.
Okay, wow. What else?
Another interesting part for me, it was Dr. Tlhakaza. Nkosindipile Tlhakaza in Ekurhuleni also believes he's doing exceptionally well. And if you frequently go to Ekurhuleni, you know what the potholes they are like. You know what it's basically more or less the same as Joburg. Traffic lights that don't work. It doesn't feel safe to drive there. It's dark at night. And so he also felt that he's doing amazingly. The word he used was excellent, above 80%.
Okay, goodness, they scored themselves really well. Have we left anybody else out?
The Cyril Xaba in eThekwini was more realistic. He gave himself an average. He said it's a 5. He was parachuted into eThekwini when the ANC swapped him and Mxolisi Kaunda, who went to Parliament. They swapped roles. And so he was sort of an intervention. And people in eThekwini are saying after he came, there seems to be an improvement. It's not where it should be, but things are better. But he gave himself a 5.
Wow. Is it interesting? Is there a parallel with it? Those that score themselves lower are actually performing better, and those that score themselves higher are performing lower.
It's also something that I picked up because the ones who are performing, the jury's still out on Gregory and Tatisi of Mangawong, because just today they were in Parliament accounting to Scopa, and some of the things that came out there about prisoners being one person in prison receiving a salary from municipality. And so the jury's still out on what's really happening and what is the situation on the ground and what is it like living in Mangawong where Gregory and Tatisi is involved. But Cyril Xaba and Ntadisi are the two who were modest in scoring themselves compared to the others.
Wow, interesting. So, what did the next question is, did the mayors, did you ask them to score the other mayors, or was that putting it too far?
Pardon?
Did you ask the mayors to score the other mayors from other metros, or was that pushing that too far?
I didn't ask them to score themselves, to score their colleagues.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have agreed, but I wonder.
Maybe next time round, right? What about public reaction? I believe there's been a fascinating public reaction around this that, in a way, we don't get from Parliament, right?
No, absolutely. Look, I've been looking at some of the comments that are coming out, and some people are saying these people are mad. That Morero deserves a -100, and there might be some truth in that. But it's just, for me, the reaction has been quite interesting because it seems people are quite keen to score these mayors themselves as well. I thought that was interesting.
Which shows you that that by its very nature, almost like the way you have a league log in football or rugby or whatever, that human beings by nature look at a league table and say, that's how I think where the team is and that's where I think they ought to be. And perhaps more of the same needs to be done on a regular basis, isn't it? Forget even annually, almost like once a week.
Perhaps, actually. It might not be a bad idea at all.
Well, maybe there's a start, right? What? Just the last thing. Did they, after they scored themselves, and did you give them a chance, or have you shared social media responses to their own scoring and say, by the way, you said this. This is what others are saying about you?
The only person who asked me to share the video once done with them was Tagaza, and I did share it with him, but we haven't spoken about it.
Okay, well, it shows there's a degree of concern about what people think. Anyway, okay, let's leave it at that, unless there's some other insight you wish to share. Siamtanda, do I have you there?
Cool. Bye.
Yeah, I was saying, let's leave it at that, unless there's another insight you wish to share.
Oh, okay. No, for me, the response to this video has been quite fascinating, and it shows that people are sort of engaged on what is being said by the mayors about themselves, and it gives me a little bit of hope around this election that's coming up.
Okay, well, there you are. I'll tell you what, feel free to tag myself as well as SFM Radio on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever you think is relevant. I'm certainly going to share it, and let's see who else debates me on those ratings. So thank you for your time, and I love the question you asked. It's brought the relevant answer, even if it's not quite believable from some people. Siamtanda Xaba, the SABC News 24 journalist, on that, asking mayors to rate themselves, and some gave themselves 8 out of 10. Wow. This is the National Pulse.
EFC is live this Thursday. Two athletes at the height of their powers fight for more than victory. They fight for the fight itself. Zakir Badat, 8 wins, all finishes. Zico Makengela, 5 wins, 5 knockouts. Champion and former champion collide in Africa's biggest welterweight championship fight. EFC 130 live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
In case you missed it.
In Gauteng, 60% of all serious crime is committed by people who are undocumented. And these are the things that they need to worry about. You can't be worrying about something because it doesn't or it fits your narrative.
Colonel Dimakatso, is that true? Do you have those statistics?
Casey, unfortunately, that is not true. You know, the notion that crime is committed by a foreign national, it cannot be true because as the SAPS, when we look at the stats, we don't necessarily look at the nationality of the suspect.
That was National Briefing this morning with Kathy Mutlatlana.
Right, Fly Sefe's 12th birthday dash takes place tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. They'll have 50,000 sale tickets up for grabs for domestic travel. So these sales have become legendary, as you know, as people chance their luck for a cheap ticket. So tomorrow's sale will be just as big, but with one significant or small change because of other issues, right? So due to the high fuel costs issue, base fares will be 12 rands, but fuel surcharges and taxes will be added on top of that. It's still the best flight bargain around, and you won't want to miss it. T's and C's apply.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
All right, as people march to the garages, if I can call it that, to fill up petrol at the petrol stations, there are others apparently who are staying away. That's interesting. There's data from Discovery Insure that South African fuel consumption, if I can call it that, usage dropped by 35% less fuel April versus March. Let's talk about that with Robert Atwell, who's the CEO of Discovery Insure. Robert, appreciate you connecting with us on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, thank you, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. So that's interesting that, you've got that 35% less fuel. Do I take it that's fuel in litres and not fuel not 35% drop in revenue, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, I think we're seeing in the data, we can see from our 200,000 plus customers exactly what they are buying at the fuel stations. And we saw a massive spike in everyone filling up more than usual on the 30th and 31st of March. And then throughout April, consumers really holding on and potentially hoping for a fuel reduction in May, which didn't materialize. But ultimately, fuel transactions dropping by 35% in April.
Now, normally one may say, well, I don't know why. It's sort of a strange thing. Is this one as straightforward as you can get? It's the consumption has gone down or usage because of that steep petrol price hike then, which, we're repeating it again tonight. So is it as obvious as that?
It's not quite as obvious, and it's been really interesting. So our data shows us various things that contributed to this reduction. I think the first is that South Africans, although they're feeling the pinch, they're remarkably resilient, and they make changes to how they commute. So we also track how far people drive through our telematics offering. And we saw through the month of April, even after adjusting for public holidays and the Easter weekend, that distance traveled reduced by around 10%. So people making real adjustments to discretionary drives and trying to drive less, ready to reduce the impact they are having on their pockets.
And I mean, you would know all of this because, the very nature of Discovery Insure, you effectively have let's call it for better word, a sensor that is able to measure the driving habits of these drivers, and therefore all these insights do come along, right?
That's exactly it. So we have a driving sensor in our clients' vehicles. We now have over 20 billion kilometers of driving data. So from an actuarial point of view, extremely credible. And the data has been really telling through this period how South Africans have adjusted their driving behavior.
Well, what can you tell us then about the actual driving behavior? And I don't mean those that choose maybe to use public transport, those that are driving. Have you detected a change in the way they drive?
Yeah, certainly. So, we've seen definitely the distance driven reducing. Another key factor is part of the Discovery program is that you get rewarded with fuel cashback. So 50% of your fuel spend gets rewarded if you're a good driver. So we've seen a big portion of our book, definitely during this fuel crunch, suddenly driving significantly better, and through that maximizing fuel rewards. But ultimately for us, what that means is South African roads ends up being safer. There are fewer accidents. So the unintended consequence ends up being really, really positive, and some of the consumers do end up saving a substantial amount on their fuel costs.
How do you then determine what's a good driver?
There are a few items that we look at, the ABCs of driving, so harsh acceleration, braking, cornering, speeding, and phone usage. And then, of course, the critical thing that people don't speak about enough is that phone usage has overtaken speeding as the number one reason for having a motor vehicle accident. So the absolute killer is driving with your phone on your steering wheel and texting and driving.
And what percentage, in terms of your data, of motorists do just that?
Yeah, we do see that it is problematic in South Africa. So how we approached it is to reward people for not using their phones. Especially we've got an advanced driving instructor that really incentivizes key behaviors, and phone usage being one of them. Through Easter, we actually had a very interesting campaign where we said to our clients, if they drive a long-distance trip and not speed and not use their phone, they get 10 Discovery miles for every kilometer driven. And we saw a massive impact of clients putting their phones away and driving safely.
How and the numbers? Were you able to determine an actual percentage of people who are normally we say drinking and driving? This is texting and driving.
Texting and driving. Yeah, we see a lot of people using hands-free or texting at a robot, but we don't really look at penalizing people for using their phone. But there is a decent percentage indeed.
Well, what about, now that we talked to you, there's another increase imminent, tonight. It's not imminent, it's happening, right? What do you foresee any differences there?
Yeah, I mean, we do expect, I think this 10% reduction that we saw in kilometers driven is probably the maximum changes that we can expect. I mean, ultimately, driving is essential. It's not very discretionary. You have to get your kids to school. You do have to get to work. So we don't expect a massive change in that. We do think that people will start looking at the overall cost of ownership when they look at their vehicle, whether it's their insurance premium, of course, now the fuel being a component, and then certainly re-looking at how they maximize fuel rewards, whether it's through the bank that they bank at or the insurer that they're at, to see how they can maximize the saving. And then, of course, we do hope that drivers drive less aggressively. We know aggressive driving, harsh speeding and cornering very often start stopping increases your fuel consumption. So hopefully an unintended consequence now that the fuel increase is coming through again is that we see good driving on South African roads.
Yeah, points taken. Okay, thank you for your time, Robert Atwill, CEO of Discovery Insure. They know how you drive. They reward you, by the way, but they also determine just how things go wrong when you drive poorly. Thanks for your time, much appreciated. But the bottom line for now is 35% less fuel purchased by consumers in April compared to March, according to their Discovery Insure data. Quite significant. This as that new increase, 3 Rand plus, imminent tonight. Let's get to some other comments before we get to the news headlines. There's a few about that. The mayor's certainly garnered a reaction.
Good afternoon again, Ashraf. Marumo here, Maike. They don't, not even one of them can say 100%. They say 8 to 10, almost 80%. They are doing like Ashraf. They all failed, these mayors, man. They all failed. Good afternoon.
They all failed. Yeah, here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the team, SAFM, and the listeners. Thank you so much for the journalists at News 24 for conducting the mayor's survey. Can I please ask you, ma'am, can you put that survey on you guys' website so that South Africans at large can then rate their mayors, and let's hear what the real people in the real societies can give you a real rating. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, listen, nothing's stopping you now. Rate your local mayor in your local council. Just do it right now. Tell me who the person is, which area. Give that person a rating out of 10. If 10 is like absolute magic. Yeah. 5:30. Here's the news headlines with Greg.
Quick look at the headlines. KZN's entire dairy herd has now been vaccinated against foot and mouth disease. The Hawks head of serious organised crime investigations has told the Madlanga Commission that the theft of cocaine from Hawks premises in KZN was by design. And the World Health Organization says it believes human-to-human transmission of the hantavirus may have taken place on a Dutch cruise ship where 3 passengers have died. There's a full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty heavy going around Joburg this afternoon. Also, not only the highways, but a crash. It's been with us a little while now. Winnie Mandela coming out of Sandton up by Peter Place. Heavy delays to start right back on Sandton Drive around Greystone, out through Parkmore, onto the Winnie Mandela trip through Hurlingham, and up towards Peter Place on your way to Bryanston. Very slow. Highways are bad. Buccleuch on the M1 all the way down to 14th Avenue. Traffic light problems there again. The Mike 1 from Sandton through to Ormonde. The N3 from Linbro Park going south to Germiston. Heavy backlogs as well. And the R21, if you're coming out of the airport, there's a crash just south of Griffiths Road at Jet Park. And then no traffic lights as you pick up the Rietfontein Road. That's the R21 south of the N12 at Ravenswood. So heavy going into the Boksburg area. N1 south coming out of Pretoria, very heavy today. Queues from Linwood Road all the way through to Rigel Avenue. Durban, a breakdown on the N3 outbound just by Pavilion Mall is causing a really big delay coming from sort of Berea out through Sherwood, Spaghetti Junction and down towards the mall area. Umgedi Road, very slow through Springfield Park, heading out towards Reservoir Hills area today, and a crash on the N2 South before the Higginson Highway off-ramp, slowing traffic past the cement factory. Cape Town traffic, the M1 in and out of town, slow to the Kuiberg interchange. M3 inbound is the surprise, that's backing up from Newlands all the way into Hospital Bend, and Baden-Powell remaining closed between Walter Sisulu and Muway due to protesting at the bottom of Khayelitsha. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Right, Jimmy, lots to consider What's top of your agenda now?
Well, Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, has announced the names of 16 lucky football fans who will receive an all-expenses-paid trip to the 2026 FIFA World Cup to watch the opening game between Mexico and Bafana Bafana. The 16 fans are coming from clubs in the Premier Soccer League's Premier Division, with only fans from Sekhukhune United and Polokwane City failing to submit their entries. Meanwhile, Bafana Bafana are also lining up a send-off match, possibly on the 30th of this month, before they depart for Mexico the following day. And Mackenzie has revealed that this will be preceded by a send-off function at the Union Buildings by President Cyril Ramaphosa alongside other events.
This World Cup is very, very important. The president will be at the Union Buildings. The president will be seeing off the team and giving them certificates and sharing his joy with them leaving. The sponsors of Bafana Bafana, Standard Bank and Adidas will also see off the players, so there'll be big events being planned around that. So I want to ask South Africans, particularly white South Africans, black people have been supporting the Springboks when Mandela asked us. We get very happy when we see you also rocking your Bafana t-shirt. So I'm saying to people, let us rally behind Bafana Bafana, and we know sometimes you want your player to be in there, but if your player is not in there, they're still representing the country.
Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso has won the Betway Premiership Coach of the Month award for the third time in a row. He led the team through an unbeaten run in April with 3 wins and 2 draws, helping Sundowns return to the top of the table ahead of Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs. Pirates forward Oswin Apollos was named Player of the Month after scoring 4 goals and setting up another in 4 matches. And he also won Goal of the Month for his calm finish against Amazulu at Orlando Stadium. Goal Mania are already calling one of the best this season. Elsewhere, it's Champions League night. Arsenal host Atletico Madrid in the second leg of the Champions League semi-final. The two sides are level heading into today's game, having drawn that first leg 1-0 in Madrid last week. Whichever team wins today will face either Bayern Munich or PSG in the Champions League final on Saturday, the 30th of May. In cricket, Proteas women coach Mandla Mashimbi has applauded Sinead Lee's maturity in her role for the team, saying that she has shown her class as a player. Mashimbi promoted Lees to an opening batter alongside captain Laura Fulvard during the past season and believes the two have complemented each other very well. The 30-year-old was important with both bat and ball in the series against Ireland, Pakistan, New Zealand, India, and the coach also says that she can get even better than she is right now. In athletics, Stan Itsegetseng, who says that he represents the Soweto Marathon Trust, has criticized Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie over plans for government to take over the troubled race. He rejected the idea, even though the minister wants to help by paying outstanding prize money and taking action against previous organizers. Itsegetseng called the takeover unrealistic and warned that it could lead to conflict, insisting government cannot simply take control of the race. He also said the event's absence from the Central Gauteng Athletics calendar is not a major issue, as approval is just a formality. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. Ke Natumi Kgapele. Modimo.
Thanks for that, Chumi. And by the way, lots of eyes from some people with Arsenal football tops today, predictably after their team effectively won without playing a game. That's after Man City drew 3-3 last night, with that third goal coming in injury time. But Arsenal playing tonight, big Champions League game. So they are quite buoyant. Everything's in their hands.
When Avukile was diagnosed with blood cancer, his only hope was a stem cell transplant from a matching donor. Thankfully, a perfect match was found, and Avukile received the transplant that saved his life. But thousands of patients in South Africa are still waiting to find their match. Together, we can give more patients like Avukile a second chance at life. Visit dkmsafrica.org.
This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Is your business struggling with cash flow, job losses, or low productivity? You're not alone.
Productivity SA's business turnaround and recovery program provides expert turnaround strategies to restructure operations, save jobs, and boost growth. Get practical tools like early warning systems, performance improvement plans, and access to productivity champions. Visit productivitysa.co.za or call 011-848-5318 to apply now. Your recovery starts here.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Well, Jimmy, we talk about the big five, but there's also Africa's big four, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. There certainly is. According to the Red Index of 2025, there are 4 economies on the African continent that are considered as worthy of investment from an infrastructure and development perspective. We're going to be taking a look at that. We're going to speak to a lead economist around that and see if we can make sense of what that means for the investment case for the African continent. Then we have a conversation taking a look at the announcement made by Aspen Pharmacare a little while ago that the production of insulin locally is set to take place in Gqeberha. We're going to be speaking to Aspen about that and see what we make of that. We also have a conversation with the group treasurer at Transnet to get a sense of the 300 million euro or almost 6 billion rand loan that they've been able to secure from the French Development Bank. We're going to get a sense of what that loan looks like and some of the terms around that. And then we're going to get to know our new commissioner a little bit better, the commissioner of the South African Revenue Services in the form of Dr. Johnston Makubu. He officially took over the reins on Friday, so we're going to speak to him today and just get a sense of his priorities and the priorities of his administration. And then because it's Tuesday, we've got an agri conversation to be had. We're going to be speaking to the team at Omnia around some of the unique technological advancements they are bringing into the agricultural landscape. Before we get to those conversations, though, a sense of some of the more volatile moves throughout the day in the form of market movements that we've been seeing. It's been a better day on the equities front. By and large, a lot of the equity markets in the green. Asian markets, some of them still closed for trade in the form of Tokyo and China, but Hong Kong open and in the red on the day's trade, down about 0.8%. European markets having a better day, but a bit of a mixed day regardless. The FTSE in London down 1.7%, the DAX up 1.2%, the CAC 40 in France up 0.5%. Local markets having a good day, resource stocks up almost 0.75%, industrials up 0.5%, financials down a little over 0.1%, but the all share in the top 40 up 0.33%. The gold price $4,573 a fine ounce. The silver price around $73.50 a fine ounce, still below $75 there. Platinum still below $2,000. Palladium a little over $1,500, and the price of Brent crude still above $110 a barrel, not where we want to see it at all. If we look at the rand at the moment against the US dollar, 16 rand 66, stronger against the British pound as well at 22 rand 60, 19.50 against the euro, and one Australian dollar 11 rand and 98 cents, briefly coming back below that 12 rand level where it tipped above. The Bitcoin price though, above $80,000 a Bitcoin in rand terms, with that slightly firmer rand, still puts it at about 1.36 million rand. We're going to look at these and other market movements with Chantal Marks of FNB Wealth and Investments a little later on. She joins me on markets. I want to get her thoughts around where we are at the moment going into the month of May and effectively the second month of the second quarter of the year. But those conversations, of course, after the 6 p.m. news. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. Jimmy, enjoy your show. 6 to 7. Set their deadlines now.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, we're going to get to further calls because you're clearly on the pulse. I need to hear you out. But let's get to the Madlanga Commission and wrap up the highlights of today, right? So this week, the Madlanga Commission is focusing on drug busts in the country. The first witness is Major General Hendrik Flynn, who is with the Hawks. So Hawks Major Flynn then was questioned about the 541 kilograms of cocaine that was taken to the Forensic Science Laboratory. So we're going to play some sound. Firstly, Flynn says the only conclusion he can reach is that it was never the intention to take the 541 kilograms of cocaine to the Forensic Science Laboratory.
Know whether they actually did obtain the samples and send it to FSL?
That's correct, Commissioners. According to the evidence, indeed, there were samples taken and submitted to the Forensic Science Laboratory.
And was there any explanation given by FSL as to why the request was made for the samples? Because according to it says that they forwarded the samples to FSL for analysis. So FSL presumably would have requested the sample, or are they doing it of their own initiative?
I'm not sure of the details in relation to that, Commissioners, but I can follow up on that.
Now, if all the exhibits were supposed to go to the FSL, can you think of any reason why samples would be taken beforehand and a day or actually 2 days after the seizure?
Commissioners, from all the other inquiries of similar seizures that I've read and perused, this is the only matter where such samples were obtained. So I find it extremely strange why it would have been done differently now. The only conclusion I can come to is that it was never the intention to take this whole batch of exhibits to the Forensic Science Laboratory.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, he continued, Flynn that is, testifying on the alleged theft of the 541 kilograms of cocaine, suggesting it's not coincidental.
So it's in that context that I say General Sinona did not follow the prescripts with regard to the handling of keys. That's a long line of steps right from the crime scene, the very first involvement of the police. They handled the scene wrongly. And from that point on, all the way to the storage in Potchefstroom, everything is going wrong. And the culmination is the theft of the cocaine. Could this have merely been a comedy of errors, or was there something more? Please express a view if you can or you are willing to.
Commissioners, I'm of the view that it's no coincidence and that the sequence of events is indeed, I would just want to get the correct word, it's by design, if I can perhaps word it as such.
In fact, I could even add no CCTV cameras, no 24-hour guards, and even if ordinarily they did not have those, but now that they have this much cocaine valued at the amount that it was, and perhaps the value did not matter much, this was a serious offense in and of itself. So that's 7 and 8 of the several factors. Please continue, General.
General, do you still want to finalize your answer to the Chair? You said it's by design. There are, of course, further factors that will add to the Chair's list. So maybe you want to reserve.
No, I'll maintain with that statement. Thank you, Commissioners.
Yes.
And then finally, Major General Hendrik Flynn then made the point about what happens when there's a huge catch in terms of major seizures, right?
Ones that were found in KZN should have been brought to Johannesburg.
That's correct. Okay. That's correct, Commissioner.
Sorry, General, in answering that question, can you just explain to the Commissioners again the anomaly here with the Amamzantoti reference versus what happened with the other bus that you looked at and where they went?
Yeah, all the other major seizures, Commissioners, were submitted to the main lab, and that is in Silverton, Pretoria, Forensic Science Laboratory. Strange enough, with this matter, only the correspondence took place between Colonel Jacob and the lab in Amamzantoti. Whilst everybody is privy to the fact that the major busts, all the exhibits, are transported to the main lab in Pretoria.
Thank you, Commissioners.
When does Colonel Jacobs say who at FSL Amanzimtoti he spoke to that said they don't have capacity?
There is evidence to that effect, Commissioner. Okay. Indeed.
Right.
Commissioner Paloi, it's at 64.
Okay, sure.
You may proceed, General. 60. If we can just on 62 deal with FSL. In your experience, is it indeed the case that they regularly inform investigating officers who need to transfer exhibits to their facilities that they don't have capacity?
It happens indeed from time to time, Commissioner. Obviously, it depends on how much exhibits are delivered and whether they are stacked to capacity or not. So indeed, it's happening. It's a practical problem. But obviously, if there's massive seizures and you speak to commanders within that space, I believe you will be accommodated, if anyhow possible.
Okay, there we are. Reaction on the Madlanga Commission today. Bring it up, or bring it on. Lots of reaction about the mayor ratings. Then the earlier conversation about South Africa diplomacy with the other African countries as well. And we've had other conversations too, right? Including that, the tribute to the doctor, as well as the tribute, in many ways, to the excellence of Tembeka and Mokai Toby, right? So let's get your thoughts. First of all, the mayor performances, yeah, lots of comment on that.
Afternoon, Ashrat. There's nothing surprising about what these mayors have said about themselves. It's the norm. That's how politicians in this country do, especially from the other party that's been in government for a while. They believe, they lie so much that they end up believing in their lies, and in the process they think people or everyone else believe in their lies and take them serious. It's just that we feel powerless at times, hence we don't speak or we don't act against their lies.
Okay, there we are. Here's another.
Afternoon, Ashrat. There's nothing.
Okay, wait. Sorry, that we've done. Let's do that.
Hello, Ashraf. The mayor survey. What a joke. The mayors fail. The premiers failed, the ministers failed, the president as well. Once kept on.
I tell you what happens if we ask each other, how do we rate yourself at our own jobs? I wonder.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. My rating for the Tshwane mayor is 3.2%. The reason being that there is no proper service delivery in Tshwane. Potholes, mass lights, street lights, water shortage, sewers problem, and she's nowhere to be seen. People have complained and have damaged tires because of potholes. Thank you.
Okay. Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. Mr. Ashraf. Hey, I'm so disappointed with my leader there, Mr. Tlagaza. Here he said we can give him distinctions on how he perform on his duties as they are finishing their term in November. Mr. Ashraf, I'm staying here in Don Park. We call it Don City. You see, it's a new suburbs that is being developed, a very good area, but most of our street lights are not working. And we've been complaining, come and check our street. Most of our street lights have been complaining. Last week ago, they come and fix one light, but they left it like that, not a light. But I don't know how can we give him distinction. Thanks,
Well,
Mr. Ashraf.
In
It's
fact,
not here.
they're giving themselves a distinction, Nati. I mean, that's really what it is.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. And now I hear many mayors scoring themselves 8 out of 10. What I can say about that is that they live in their own world. Even the interview was held at Beechwood Hotel. So clearly, when they look at their surroundings, everything is excellent. they don't go into the ground and see the actual people and see what exactly is the situation on the ground. That's why they're able to score themselves 8 out of 10. Delusional.
Delusional. Marie Antoinette style. I'm just saying.
Good day, Ashraf. Your guest was saying that South Africa must create employment for its people. He is right. But at the same tone, Zimbabwe must create employment for its people. Mozambique must create employment for its people. Malawi must create employment for its people. Nigeria must create employment for its people. Because South African economy does create employment, but you find that people that are illegal are taking these jobs and they accept low wages. Thank you, Ashraf. This is Mutsumi.
Well, thank you for that. Right, and here's another related to that.
Hi, Ashraf. Regarding this issue of Africa, I feel like Africa is not going to develop. Africa is going to remain the same, if not worse, because of one, corruption. Two, by these so-called leaders that are stooges that don't tell each other the honest truth. Like, for example, here in Southern Africa, we only have South Africa as the powerhouse. We don't, as South Africa push maybe Mozambique or Zimbabwe to become also powerhouse, we are scared of them becoming powerhouse, so that a lot of influence is going to go away from us. I mean, you look at the ANC foreign policy, it is what it is. We are having a lot of immigrants because of that. So we're going to remain stagnant forever. We're not going to go anywhere as Africans. We're going to fight each other, and it's always going to end there. Thank you very much.
Well, you've made your point, strongly so. Others agree with you? Hopefully not. Where's the light?
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. Mr. Ashraf, I think we need to guard against state resources to be used to settle like personal scores just because someone is holding like a higher position or what. Why now? I'm talking about the Fadil Adams matter. Why now? I think the late Siniso Makaka passed away a long time ago. Why now?
Wow, that's a big question.
Ashraf, good afternoon. Dalman Kobega. Fadil is a crook. He's just a banger. The sooner they get him off the streets, him and his cronies, the better it will be, and then the police can start doing their job with these gangsters.
So much reaction. I wonder if others agree with that. I mean, that's your statement, not convicted, right?
The people of Cape Town now, I'm starting to... I hear a lot of voice notes coming from Cape Town, and they all of a sudden like this Fadil guy. He's fighting gangsterism in Cape Town. When he's like behaving the way he's behaving, I mean... come on, man. Come on.
What are you deducing?
Afternoon, Ashraf. Anonymous from Cape Town. Regarding the Fadil Adams thing, he's a member of parliament. And if he belongs to one of those portfolios that investigates crime or oversight, why can't he go and visit an incarcerated criminal in jail? Many people do it.
Okay, there's it. And I'm trying to get through more. Here's another two.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I think Fidel Adams has been played like a pawn in a game of chess, and unfortunately now the chickens have come home to roost. Hey, and I concur with Minister Mackenzie 100%. I don't have anything against Mama Joy, but I think it would be grotesquely unfair for her to be taken again on the money of the federation, when there are also others who are supporters and fanatics of the national team. Therefore, I also agree with Mackenzie Avila in Adelaide. Thank you.
Okay, but interesting, I mean, one is she may be, I mean, she's going anyway because she's been sponsored, but assuming she wasn't and she needed to go, does she add value to the event? That's the fundamental question. This is not about like taking a fan because you feel sorry for them. Does she add value to the ambiance of an event representing South Africa? If she does, isn't that worth something in the same way that a footballer adds value to a World Cup?
Good afternoon, Ashraganda, Istuelo, Parasi, in Kimberley, in Khalishewe. On the press briefing of Gaten McKenzie, I actually concur with him. No one is better than any other person. Mama Joy had his chance like every other South African. Now, for those 16 who have to go there, let them go. They are the best if they are selected, so let them go. It's unfortunate some of us, we cannot go, but we are saying, let the others go. Mama Joy can just tell the husband to buy for her a ticket. Thank you.
Well, I mean, she's being sponsored already, so that's been sorted out, isn't it?
Hi, Ashraf, and lovely South Africans and your team as well. It's Eddie from Ordnance Stress. Ashraf, I thought your metros in the country will be a beacon of hope in terms of governance at local level, but I can see that they are falling apart. And I thought, as beacon of hope, a lot of people will be employed in the metros. There will be sustainable livelihood, only to find that they are collapsing. And we need to do something about these municipalities. And Auditor General must now start really hitting hard on those who are taking money from these municipalities. This cannot be allowed, or else we are all doomed. Thank you very much.
And in many ways, these mayoral rankings have now put the spotlight on their municipalities, right?
Thank you, Sir Ashraf. To just support the voice note of the gentleman who's from Don City. Ekurhuleni, it's dysfunctional, dismally and drastically so. Out of 10, in fact, there's no rating for this gentleman because I don't know what he's talking about. Potholes everywhere, street lights not working, dustbins are collected days after, or you'll find that the dustbin will be collected after 4 in the evening, and you're asking yourself, what's happening? Dustbins, papers are everywhere. It's a mess. It's just a mess.
Okay, I think that's about it. Here's a question, Ashraf. That means Advocate Toby will recuse himself when it comes to EFF cases in the Concord. Let's see how that happens. Look, let's leave it at that. Podcasts are available of all the big conversations we've had today on the show, so check it out, safm.co.za. Follow SAFM on social media. Follow me too and engage with me. Just Ashraf Garda. People always say, how do you spell your name? Let me do it. ASHRAF. And the surname, GARDA. Okay, thank you for listening. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock, set your alarms now. Here's the news at 6 with Greg.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Progress in foot and mouth vaccinations in Hawks Head testifies on cocaine theft. Good evening. KwaZulu-Natal's entire dairy herd has now been vaccinated against foot and mouth disease. The province produces around 30% of the country's raw milk. The KZN state veterinarian Themba Sikakane says about 800,000 cattle of the provincial herd of 2.5 million has also been vaccinated so far.
With the dairy herd, we brought in milk producer organizations who then worked with us in collating the data of the farm and the farmers, because they could go to the milk processing plants and get that data for us. So in partnership with them, we then appointed private vets that participated in the vaccination program. So that's how we've just vaccinated just under 400,000 head of cattle of the dairy herd. Our relationship with the red meat industry is